Coming from Joe Rogan's podcast, episode 2530, this is a chilling account of a 12-foot giant that slaughtered an entire U.S. Special Forces team deep in an Afghan cave. What exactly is this monster? Let's find out.
The story of the Kandahar giant.
Yeah, let's tell the story.
This story has grown into a mythology over the years. Years ago, I was working with a gentleman named Steve Quayle, and we started a production company called Gen 6 Productions. And we were making documentary films mainly about giants, mainly on the topic of giants.
Giants as like referred to in the Bible, in ancient history, the Smithsonian giants.
That's right, biblical and historical accounts of giants. So I was traveling around the world investigating giants, and Steve is known for his investigations into giants. And he got a phone call from an elderly woman who told him, "You need to talk to my son. My son has a story he needs to tell you." And she had to convince her son to talk to Steve, and ultimately he did. And he was active duty. He was a C-130 pilot, active duty. He actually went on coast to coast with Steve. They went on coast to coast together, and he related his story, I believe, with George Norrie, him, Steve, and George. And then later on, we flew him into Bozeman, Montana to put him in our documentary film that we were making. And he wanted to be filmed in silhouette. He did not want his face out there, even though he knew that they're going to be able to mark him just by his voice. So he flies into Bozeman. We meet with him. He shows us his credentials. He was active duty C-130. And then he told us the following story, among many other things that he told us. He said back in 2005, he was deployed in Afghanistan and Iraq running missions as a C-130 cargo pilot. And oftentimes they would have him fly into Bagram Airfield. And these were routine missions, and so on one of these missions, he's flying into Bagram. But this time when he landed, he was met, as soon as he deplaned, he was met on the tarmac by some individuals that he describes as the babysitters. He calls them the babysitters. He thinks they were either Army intelligence or Air Force intelligence guys. They didn't tell him. But this was different, because when he disembarked, they told him, no photos, no mention of this ever, this never happened. So he knew that whatever was about to happen was top secret. And he had flown classified missions before, usually retrieving Taliban guys, what he described as high-valued assets. But this was different, because there were intelligence guys on the tarmac waiting for something. And it turns out what they were waiting for was the cargo that was being delivered on a forklift to the C-130. And the pilot says that the first thing that struck him as this cargo was moving toward him and his crew was the odor. He said it smelled like musk, BO, and death. And it was extremely pungent. And when the cargo arrived, it was on an air cargo pallet, which is 7 by 9. And he could see that there was a person on the pallet in the fetal position. And this individual was so large that his hands and his feet and part of his head were hanging off the pallet. And he and his loadmaster, and there were some Marines who accompanied the pallet, who accompanied this cargo, they were actually putting their feet up to this guy's feet, this dead giant's feet, and seeing how small their feet were compared to his. Now, the giant had red hair. He had 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot. His feet were wrapped in like a crude canvas foot wrapping. And he was solid as a rock. Again, most of his body was covered by a tarp, but the pilot and the guys around him were hitting him with their fists. And he came up to about their midsection, laying in the fetal position. And the pilot told me he was solid as a rock, this guy. And he asked the Marines, what happened? Where did this guy come from? And they told him that they had heard that there was a team that was out in Afghanistan that was looking for Taliban or something. And they came upon a cave because there was a nearby village, and the villagers were were bringing food and other artifacts to the mouth of this cave. And so they thought that they're aiding and abetting the Taliban. So they went into the cave, and rather than encountering the Taliban, what they found was this enormous humanoid who killed them all. And then, according to these soldiers, they deployed another team to go look for that team. And when they found the cave, they found the traces of that other team. They were ready. They were prepared. And they were able to kill the giant. In fact, the soldiers told the pilot that the giant was eating on members of the team who had killed previously. But these new guys, they took him down, and then they had a transport helicopter come in and airlift him to Bagram.
Did you ever try to find records of who was there and casualties that were reported, deaths that were reported?
It's very difficult. The Pentagon actually released a statement some years ago, which is bizarre to me. You know, basically saying, in paraphrasing, the Kandahar giant incident never happened. There was never a giant that was killed in Afghanistan.
The Pentagon?
So, yeah, it was a representative. It was like a spokesman from the Pentagon or something, or a release from the Pentagon.
Is this available online?
Yeah, they actually felt the need to debunk this.
That's hilarious.
Now,
that gets me sketchy.
Well, I believed the pilot because he was a very credible guy. He didn't want his name out there. He didn't want fame or notoriety. He was very nervous. He thought there's a good chance that they're going to recognize me by my voice. He was on Coast to Coast AM, and then he's on in our documentary. There's a good chance I'm going to get recognized, and there's going to be some reprisal. He was nervous. Now, they weighed the giant before they loaded him on the C-130, because they have to load everything that goes onto the C-130. The loadmaster weighed him. He weighed 1,100 pounds. And they estimated his height at 10 to 12 feet tall. And so they loaded him onto the C-130, and then they flew him to Qatar. And then they unloaded the cargo in Qatar. And our pilot told me he heard through the grapevine that the body ended up at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He said, I don't know. That's just what I heard. So this is a firsthand account from the C-130 pilot who flew the body himself from Bagram Airfield to Qatar.
Why does all the weird shit go to Wright-Patterson?
That's a good question.
Because that's where the weird shit goes.
Right.
Here's the thing. Stories like the Kandahar giant spark huge curiosity. But curiosity without critical thinking leaves you open to pure manipulation. If you want to separate genuine military mysteries from fabricated internet folklore, you need a quick mental framework to test any bold claim before accepting it as truth. Here is your 3-step filter for analyzing viral conspiracy stories. First, trace the first-hand chain of evidence. Notice how this narrative relies heavily on hearsay. Ask yourself, is there a primary physical record, like a flight log, a verified service record, or unedited footage? Or is it entirely a friend of a friend account? Anonymous testimony from a C-130 pilot makes for great storytelling, but without verifiable metadata, it remains an unfalsifiable myth. Second, spot the mythological tropes. Notice the specific details in the report. Red hair, 6 fingers, 6 toes, and ancient cave dwellers. These are direct copies of pre-existing giant legends, from biblical Nephilim myths to North American folklore, like the Lovelock Cave giants. When a modern military story perfectly matches ancient mythology, you are likely looking at modern folklore adapting old tropes rather than breaking news. Third, evaluate the institutional response. The Pentagon debunking this story doesn't automatically mean a cover-up. Major institutions frequently address viral hoaxes simply to curb public panic or stop endless media inquiries. Official denials aren't always proof of hidden truth. Often they are just reactions to internet virality. The real takeaway isn't whether giants exist, it's how easily well-constructed stories hijack human imagination. Train your brain to enjoy the mystery without surrendering your logic. What's the wild mystery you've heard that actually turned out to be true? Drop it in the comments below, subscribe for more deep dives into the space where myth meets reality, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next analysis.
stories of giants.
I want that to be real so bad. I mean, I want all of
That
this
the
to be real.
Smithsonian's been hiding the information. Those are the big conspiracies.
Could be.
Down in their basement, they've got like a 10-foot tall human being. A
mean,
race
there was-
of giants that existed. Roamed the earth. Yeah. David and Goliath's a real story.
It just seems like they wouldn't be gone. They wouldn't be the ones that would have been killed off.
Unless, in the cataclysm, like the Younger Dryas impact theory, there wasn't enough food.
Oh,
and they died off, you know? Because if you're that big, you need to eat a lot.
So you think they were around like way long ago?
Way
and
long
died
ago.
off way long ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think like recently. But I think like
Yeah.
it is, there's so many stories and so many cultures have these stories, even in the Bible, of a race of giants.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it couldn't just be big people.
Right.
It seems like what they're
mean-
talking about is something crazy.
I guess it could be if you're
It
just
could be.
because if you're just mythologizing. There's
Yeah.
no way that's a word, but if you're just turning something that is real, this is the same with like a dragon. People obviously just get inspired by things that are around them. They start to morph into things. I mean, there was no fire-breathing animal
Right.
flying around.
Probably crocodiles and shit like that.
Yeah,
that
crocodiles,
people
and
saw.
then there are like cobras that spit venom, which obviously gets in your eyes. It's probably going to burn like a son of a bitch. So like, there's like the
Right.
fire myth. I mean.
And people exaggerate.
Yeah, so exactly that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So like, people will take somebody who is a big son of a bitch, and they go, "Oh, well, let's exaggerate and
For
say
sure.
that the guy he fought was 9 feet tall
Right,
instead
right.
of 6'5".
Exactly.
Which he probably was. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, when you talk about races of these giants, you could also be talking about like people from Iceland.
Yeah.
Right?
Who were naturally.
Enormous
Big as
Viking
hell.
dudes
Yeah.
who were always win those fucking strongman competitions. Those guys are, there's giants up there. Like
Oh, yeah.
400, like the Mountain from Game of Thrones, like that kind of
Yeah.
person. So you think about
Yeah.
that, like that's that size human.
Right.
There could have been a bunch of those around, and maybe that's what they were talking about, giants. Or there could have been like a specific race of humans. Like they keep finding these additional types of humans. Like they found Denisovans fairly recently, and then that other one that we brought up the other day, the big-headed people. That's fairly recently. They've discovered that this is a completely different branch. That there may, I mean, but here's the thing: if they did find those, would they tell us? Like if archaeologists, like who would put the cap on that? If they found like a 10-foot human under like a just gigantic
Right.
dead human with a huge sword underground, like would they just say we're wrong, giants existed, or would they go people can't handle this?
That's a tough because that's the answer to, or that's the question for so many things. It's
They
like,
might say people can't handle it. It's not outside the realm
Yeah.
of possibility.
I would say they'd probably say
Isn't that infuriating?
yeah.
Can you imagine if it was you? Now imagine you're out in West Texas, wherever you are, hanging out with your friends, and somebody notices something in the ground, and you start digging, and you pull out a fucking thigh bone that's this big, and you plop it down. You go, what the fuck is that? And then
Yeah.
you got a buddy who works at the university nearby, and he starts digging. He's like, hey, dude, this is a fucking human foot. And he pulls out a human
Yeah.
foot that's size 38. And you're like, what is going on, man? And so then
Yeah.
you bring in some experts and like, holy shit, dude, this is a giant. And then they do DNA tests. They find out it's a real actual creature.
Yeah. I'm telling everyone.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're going to kill you. They're going to kill you. The scientists will kill you. They're going to run you off
that's
the
true.
road.
Yeah, I
Look at
guess.
this.
Longest, or what I guess would be the tallest
The people have ever found?
that they've ever found. It was found in China. It's supposedly about 4,400 years old. Would have been about 16, 18 years old. The weird thing here is, though, that it says there was 3 drill holes found in the skull, and they don't
Whoa.
know why.
Whoa, drill holes. How big was it?
6'4".
Oh.
Oh, fuck me.
Well, back then, that was probably fucking huge.
Well, you said they found it in China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a giant.
And they're calling it, they call
Right.
it a
Well, it
giant.
might be Mongolian, you know?
Well, I
Also
just mean
looked
compared
up-
to the Chinese that are found,
Right.
they're probably like, holy shit, this
Goliath is anywhere from modern day, maybe they say up to 6'6", but they're like taking the word for word from the Bible, it would have been about 9'9".
Yeah, that's what I always
Right,
thought. That's
right,
what I
right,
always
I don't know how
remember
to
as
see
a
a weight,
kid.
weight size.
Right. Well, if you're back then, nobody had any food, and the average man was probably like 5'4". So if you encounter some dude who's 6'6", some big jack guy. That is a giant.
That's a giant.
And then also, like, you got to think human beings, if they exist today and they're 6'6", they had the potential to be that big back then. They just didn't get the food.
Yeah.
But if you are in some very nutrient-rich environment, look at
Yao
that.
Ming versus, both those guys played pro basketball.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Is it Muggsy Bogues?
Muggsy Bogues, yeah.
But there's smaller people that exist that can function and do stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is that the potential for that guy, the Yao guy, who's, how tall is he?
7'7", I think.
Right, that exists in the human genome, right? That's not like we engineered them like we did dogs.
Right.
Like that exists.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe back then, if you had a ton of food and you didn't have to worry about war, like, and people
Yeah.
just kept breeding and growing and getting nutrient rich, because the thing about people in the past is they didn't have any fucking food, man.
Yeah.
Like the average size of a guy who fought in the Civil War was, I think, 125 pounds or something crazy like that.
5'4" and 120, I think, is
Nuts.
the thing. Yeah.
Starving to death.
It's like
Starving to death, shooting people with
It's like a
muskets.
14-year-old girl. I mean, that's
Nuts.
like, yeah.
Right? And all they needed
Yeah.
was food. You know, you give them protein, and then they grow normal sized, which is
Yeah.
really wild.
Yeah. Because there's tons of people that are well over 7 feet. It's
Yeah.
not like it's, I mean, it is an anomaly compared to.
Speaking of, there's one guy in the Civil War 7'6". He would have
7'6".
stood out
Whoa.
a little bit, but everybody else was 5'8", average.
He was
5'8".
7'6" in the Civil War. Holy shit.
Is that? Oh, that's not a picture of him, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
But
never
the
mind.
thing
But yeah.
about the stories in the Bible, though, it's like these are like mystical giants, the Nephilim, you know?
Is
Look at this
he one of the
guy.
tallest men?
Ohio.
So he's. There you go.
Bro, you do not want
Thomas
to box
Jones,
that guy.
7'6".
7'6".
That's a
well,
big
she
dude.
must be pretty tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
She probably needed to do that big, take care of her.
yeah,
know what I'm
probably.
saying?
Yeah. She can be in this
The big lady.
5'8" guys.
Yeah, she can't be fucking with me.
He's like, what are y'all doing? Yeah.
She'll hold me down. I'll have to fight that lady to the death.
No chance. Yeah.
She needs a big man. She's
Yeah.
a big giant man to fuck her correctly.
Yes.
Want to know what's crazier than the myth of giants? The fact that giants actually exist today, and you're probably looking at their direct evolutionary descendants without even realizing it. Here is the absolute truth that mainstream history skips. Those giants, mentioned in ancient texts like Goliath, weren't supernatural 10-foot monsters. They were simply hyper-nourished, genetically gifted humans living in an era where the average adult male stood barely 5'3" due to severe malnutrition. To an ancient soldier, encountering a 6'6" warrior wasn't just facing a tall guy. It was like running into a terrifying, real-life superhero. Human height is capped by gravity and biological mechanics. If a human truly grew to 10 feet tall, the square-cube law dictates their bone density and cardiovascular system would collapse under their own mass. Nature has strict structural limits, but our human genome holds massive genetic variations. Every time you see a 7'6" NBA player like Yao Ming, you are looking at the exact maximum physical limit of the human species, the exact same limits that spawned ancient legends thousands of years ago. The real takeaway isn't that secret societies are hiding giant bones in hidden vaults. The true mind-blowing reality is how easily human perception transforms a simple biological anomaly into a legendary myth through centuries of exaggerated storytelling. If this changed how you look at ancient history, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below with the weirdest myth you want us to debunk next, and make sure to watch our deep dive video linked on screen to discover how ancient civilizations built impossibly massive stone structures without modern machinery. See you in the next one. Coming from Joe Rogan's podcast 2510, The Chilling Secrets Hidden by the Military About a Giant Warlord in Afghanistan. Let's watch.
About this, and this is a silly thing to ask you because you said Kandahar.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the legend of
Yes.
the Kandahar giant?
Of course.
Yeah. What did you hear? When did you hear?
Well, I've seen. Okay. There's some freaks out there, man. There's some freaks. So yeah, I mean, I've seen the YouTube video. I've heard about it from other people, but legit. Okay. Hard for me because I was far away. Okay, I was probably about 200 meters away.
If you don't know about the legend of Kandahar, let me explain. The legend of Kandahar is a popular modern urban legend claiming that in 2002, a squad of U.S. soldiers went missing in a remote mountain region of Kandahar, Afghanistan. prompting a military rescue team to track them to a massive cave. According to the myth, which first gained traction online via alternative media outlets and paranormal investigators, the soldiers were ambushed by a hidden 13-foot-tall, red-headed humanoid giant with 6 fingers on each hand who impaled a soldier with a spear before the rest of the squad killed it with sustained rifle fire. The story concludes with the military allegedly airlifting the giant's corpse away on a helicopter to a top-secret facility for study, enforcing strict non-disclosure agreements on the witnesses.
We were doing a mobility exercise. Okay, mobility, I hate mobility. Okay, mobility was my least favorite op. Mobility, basically, you get in a bunch of trucks and you kind of roll out and you kind of look for a fight. Okay, so we were doing like a 2-week mobility in this region, kind of north of the Panjway. I don't remember exactly what it was called. It was this, surrounded by mountains, this big valley, and we were rolling around. And so there was a village that we were going to check out, and I'm like a gunner, okay? So I don't know everything that's going on. I'm a dude on a machine gun, okay? But I can see everything that's happening. I kind of know what we're doing. But I know that there's a meeting, and what they have is they have these warlords. It's not the same kind of political system or anything that we have in like North America. Kind of the baddest dude in the region becomes in charge, okay? So we were meeting with one of the local warlords. And so the town was like 500 meters away. They drove out from the town about 500 meters, and we had our trucks about 200 meters from the meeting point. Our officer and a couple dudes went forward, and we're looking. This guy, I mean, he was maybe twice as big. He was huge. He was a massive dude.
Like how big?
I think he was 8 feet. I think he was 8 foot something. And it's embarrassing. It's like, Devin, you're crazy? And he's big.
How? And he was 200 meters away.
He's about 200 meters away, but I can see the guys. We got optics. Our officer was probably somewhere between at the bottom of his chest. Great big Afghan dude. Big beard, big dude. And his lackeys around him were normal size. Great big warlord. So they're out there. There's big people. There's big,
8 feet is nuts.
I have personally seen people who were probably over 8 feet.
What?
Yeah.
In Afghanistan?
No. I saw these guys up northern Canada. Cree. I was up in Ojibugamo, okay, this Cree village. I remember walking up. I'm there for arm wrestling. We're having an arm wrestling tournament, and I'm looking up. We're walking up the stairs in this hockey arena, and this dude, I'm like, that's a really big dude. And by the time I got there, I was about, me, and I'm like 6'5", I was about at his nipple. Okay?
What?
Yeah, big hands. Big, long hands. Like out of the Goonies, like misshapen face. I'm like, my God. I'm like, how big are you? He's like, just laughed at me. And he's like, my dad's 8'11". He's like,
what?
Yeah, big.
My dad's 8'11".
I'm telling you, there's big people. And people don't know about them. Guinness doesn't know about them. They live up in the woods. There's big people out there. And not all of them.
What is that guy, Jamie?
He's from that region, apparently. I don't know how to say that. Edouard Beaupre.
So there's just giants that live in that
8'3".
region?
Yeah.
8'3".
The Cree are very big people. And the thing is when they get to eat what they're supposed to eat, the problem is so many of them eat junk now.
Edouard Beaupre, 1881 to 1904, the Willow Bunch Giant, was a Canadian circus strongman who reached a verified height of 8 feet 3 inches due to pituitary gigantism. Renowned for his immense strength, including lifting full-grown horses, the gentle, multilingual giant toured with the Barnum and Bailey Circus to support his large family. Tragically, the physical toll of his condition led to his death from a pulmonary hemorrhage at just 23 years old during the St. Louis World's Fair. Following decades of post-mortem museum exploitation, his family finally reclaimed his remains in 1990 to give him a dignified burial in his Saskatchewan hometown.
Right, because they grow up on the
367 pounds, maybe, or 367. Sorry,
they
8
grow
foot
up.
2.5, 367 pounds, age 33. Whoa.
Yeah, I forget the name of these brothers, but there's a bunch of them. Yeah, there's some weird genetics out there.
If you've ever felt that standard human potential is capped, the stories we discuss today prove that reality is far stranger than fiction. From military encounters deep in the valleys of Kandahar to hidden genetic giants in the remote north, the world is full of anomalies waiting to be understood. To truly get the value out of what you just watched, here are 3 actionable takeaways to keep in mind. First, question the boundary between urban legends and documented reality. Mythologies like the Kandahar giant often obscure fascinating biological truths, like extreme pituitary gigantism seen in figures like Edouard Beaupré. Always look past the sensationalized headlines to find the real scientific or historical context. Second, understand the impact of isolation and genetics. Distinct populations living in remote geographical areas often retain unique physical traits due to genetics and localized nutrition. Human diversity is far broader than what official record books or Main Street media typically showcase. Third, never rely on perception alone. Even trained operatives using precision optics find it challenging to visually estimate scale without direct reference points. Critical thinking requires cross-referencing eyewitness stories with historical, medical, and biological data. If this deep dive expanded your perspective on what exists in the quiet corners of our planet, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you the most compelling breakdowns of high-stakes stories, military accounts, and unexplained phenomena every week. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on these sightings. Do you believe these are unrecorded genetic giants or exaggerated military tales? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments.
So we only briefly touched on this Kandahar giant story, but were you ever in Kandahar?
Yeah, that's down in the south of
How
Afghanistan.
remote is it?
I mean, there's a large city there. Town city, I don't know the difference between the two. It's relatively built up. As far as southern Afghanistan, it's going to be, you have Kabul up north, Kandahar is a little bit down south. Kabul in the north, you're going to start looking at the exterior range of the Hindu Kush. Kandahar still has some topography, but you're looking at more of like a high desert terrain.
And so there's caves and things along those lines? This is the idea that this thing lived in a cave.
Yeah. I mean, so, yeah, it's there is topography that is there for sure. Possible? I don't know.
Well, the reason why people entertain this idea of giants at all is a lot of it's biblical. It's like stories from the Bible. And then also stories from ancient civilizations that talked about red-haired giants, which is the weird thing about this thing, had red hair. Like the Native Americans had tales of red-haired giants that they fought off. Like, there's a lot of people that believe that all these stories from antiquity about giants are all referring to an actual different race of humans. Like we are one race of humans, that's the Homo sapien that survived, but then there's also races of humans that didn't survive, like the Hobbit people from the island of Flores, that they found out there was a branch of the human species that was like 3 feet tall, covered in hair, real tiny heads. Weird, but had tools and had weapons. And
I think some of that stuff's real. I think sometimes, though, the stories, they're intentionally nesting a greater message through the vehicle of that story. So whether it's like accurate or not, it's more about the story that they are telling. And I'm not saying like the Kandahar giant has some story associated with it, but some of the older, like the civilizations and the stories that they tell, I think it's just a vehicle that they can nest something in there to create deeper thought, if that makes sense. It's what I see you guys doing as comedians. I've talked about this recently. It is interesting to me, and I never paid attention to it, but I know he's a good friend of yours, Dave Chappelle. I watched his last special. The ability for comedians to nest inside of your set pretty impactful and powerful, like societal conversations and ideas, and get people to laugh about it. But even when they're done laughing about it, they're going to be thinking about it when they're driving home. It's just the vehicle to get people thinking about stuff.
Well, in terms of comedy, I agree, and Dave is one of the best of all time, if not the best at doing that. But what kind of a nesting would you – well, you're talking about giants.
It depends on the morals and ethos of that society. If they want to be a warrior society, you have to have something that you're constantly fighting or protecting yourself against. Whether that's real or you are nesting the morality of your society in that story, both could achieve the same end state.
If there really was a giant and they really did kill this thing and then brought it back secretly, like what would be the purpose of that? Why wouldn't they? That's where I go. Like, what would be the purpose of hiding the fact that this thing existed? I don't see why the government would hide the discovery of a giant. Like, what?
Yeah.
What military reason? What national security reason would you have for hiding the thing that this thing existed?
At some level of objective skepticism and criticism or looking into these stories, you get to that point of like, who's benefiting from this and why?
Yeah.
Why would anybody actually go out of their way to put this much effort into obscure something like that?
Yeah. That's how I feel about giants.
If you found this breakdown of the Kandahar giant fascinating, it reveals a powerful truth about human nature. We are hardwired to love extraordinary stories. But as Joe and Andy pointed out, the real skill isn't just listening to wild tales, it's learning how to separate captivating myth from grounded reality. When you encounter shocking claims, conspiracy theories, or sensational news, try applying this simple 3-step critical filter before sharing or believing it. First, ask who benefits. Always question who gains attention, influence, or money from spreading a specific story. If there is no clear logical reason for a massive cover-up, skepticism should be your default setting. Second, look for tangible physical evidence. Fascinating folklore exists in almost every culture, from red-haired giants to mythical beasts. However, myth requires faith, while history requires verifiable fossils, artifacts, and cross-examined data. Third, identify the hidden lesson. As Andy highlighted with Dave Chappelle's comedy, powerful stories are often just vehicles built to deliver deeper messages about societal morals, fear, or unity. Ask yourself what core message the story is actually trying to teach. By sharpening this mental tool, you protect yourself from misinformation while still appreciating the rich storytelling traditions of human culture. Which unexplained mystery should we dissect under the lens of critical thinking next? Drop your top pick in the comments below, hit that like button if you learned something new today, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our next deep dive.
Earlier, there are 24 Tirthankaras. All 24 have lived, according to the Jains, but archaeology has only recognized the last 2 of them. Because those were the only, the timelines and their lifespans, that kind of fits. But when you talk about the way back days, that's just myth.
What do they say their timelines were?
Oh, millions of years. And the first Tirthankara was over a mile tall.
Oh my God.
So it's just, but it's consistent across the world. The Jains talk about it, the Hindus, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Bible, all of them talk about very long lifespans, giant statures. Is it coincidence that all of our ancient myths talk about the same things?
Right.
Or might it have been true?
Yeah. Well, then there's the Book of Enoch, which is Anna Paulina Luna turned me onto that. She's like, you got to read that. And I read it twice now. And I'm like, this is the most bizarre depiction of a human story.
Yep.
The Watchers came down and mated with the daughters of men and created the Nephilim, who were giants who destroyed and consumed everything and were wiped out by the flood. What?
And the accepted biblical texts barely hint at that. They still talk about it.
Yes.
But the extra biblical canon the stories are much more like the Book of Enoch.
Yeah.
There's a reason I think that those were excluded from the Bible.
Well, they were excluded by rabbis.
I know.
Because they didn't jive with the Torah, which is hilarious. Like you get to discuss, and they all were in the same caves in Qumran. Like the version of the Book of Enoch was in the same as the Book of Isaiah. They were all in the same scrolls.
Yeah.
It's just like, what?
Yep.
How do you guys leave this out? Like, imagine if they taught that at church on Sunday. You'd be like, what are you saying?
Yeah. David and Goliath.
The Watchers?
I think it's interesting that you can totally accept that David and Goliath is a real story. And Goliath was a giant in the Bible.
Yeah.
Right.
How,
But then,
how tall was he supposed to be, though? Couldn't he be like a really big guy from Iceland?
I think he was described. They described the way that the Hebrews described it is that they made them feel like grasshoppers.
Whoa.
The giants, the Nephilim, made them feel. They were like, we are as if we are grasshoppers. So I think that they were meant to be very, very large.
It would be really nice if they found a Bigfoot somewhere.
Oh my! I love Bigfoot.
Not a Bigfoot, not the animal. I mean, like a giant foot, like a stone.
Oh, yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah.
David and Goliath. So he was supposed to be 10 feet tall, often calculated as roughly 9 to 10 feet tall. The thing about that is, like, people are full of shit, and they can make up a story. The guy was so big, he was 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, he could have been like the mountain from Game of Thrones.
Totally.
Like a real person.
Yep.
Maybe 6.5 feet tall.
Any of our basketball
Oh.
players today.
Who says he was 6.5 feet tall? Scholars?
The Dead Sea Scrolls.
The Dead Sea Scrolls. So 6 cubits in a span, often calculated as roughly 9 to 10 feet tall. In the ancient Hebrew text, Greek and Dead Sea Scrolls texts say 4 cubits in a span. So that's only 6.5 to 7.5 feet tall, depending on how the cubit was defined. So that makes sense. So who knows?
9 to 10 is pretty big.
Yeah, 9, 10's big. But if the Dead Sea Scrolls are correct, then it's only 6.5 feet. So he's a basketball player.
Yeah.
That's not even a really tall one.
Yeah.
Who's the biggest basketball player now? How tall are they?
There's a kid that's like 14 that's almost 8 feet tall.
What?
I don't know if he's going to make it to the NBA or anything, but
Just plop it in.
Oh my God, that's so crazy. That's so big. So you got to imagine. But you got to imagine with technology. So they're working right now on life extension technology, and they've already figured out a way to reverse the age of skin cells, and they're on their path to being able to stop human aging and maybe potentially even reverse it. If that technology becomes implemented,
this kid's 7'9" now.
Jeez.
20 years old though. He's actually playing basketball, but
Jeez. So he's bigger than Goliath by a lot. Goliath would talk shit about him. Write a story about it. He got his ass kicked by a basketball player. But if you can imagine this technology being implemented in the future and then being refined and then getting to a point where they really have it mastered, like we have with so many medical interventions that we have today, you could get to a point where someone could live to 1,000 years or several thousand years. And if you're the king, of course you're going to want that technology. And you're also going to be very protected, so you don't have to worry about dying in other ways unless somebody usurps you.
Yeah.
So you can, like, the Sumerian kings list and some of these, like the Zep Tepi list, you look at that and you go, well, what are they saying? Like, why was this guy 6,000 years old?
Yeah.
How did he rule the country for 30,000 years? That sounds insane.
Coming from podcast 1284 of Joe Rogan, this is the story of a mysterious ancient civilization that history may have forgotten. Let's watch.
I explored the Olmec mystery in considerable depth.
Could you explain that to people that maybe
in Fingerprints of the Gods? Yes. So it's considered to be the earliest high culture of Central America. Everybody's heard about the Aztecs. Everybody's heard about the Maya. But before the Aztecs and before the Maya, there were a culture who are referred to as the Olmecs. Again, we don't know what they called themselves. That's what the Aztecs called them. They called them the Olmecs, and it means the rubber people because that rubber-producing area of Mexico. They worked in giant megalithic constructions. What they're most famous for is these huge carved human heads, which can be on a scale of up to 20 to 25 tons in weight, and which have curious features which have been interpreted variously as Polynesian, African, don't look like classic Native American features.
Keep that up.
But one of the things I've realized is that there is no classic Native American feature. That Native Americans are have a very complex genetic story with very many different elements brought into it, and we shouldn't be necessarily surprised by the supposedly non-Native American look of these Olmec heads.
What do we think those helmets were that they were wearing?
nobody knows, because no physical example of such a helmet has ever been found, just like no physical example of an Egyptian pharaoh's a crown has ever been found. All we see is the stone reproductions of them.
Do they universally wear these helmets in these stone reproductions?
They pretty much all wear these helmets in the Olmec stonework. There's another fascinating figure from La Venta, one of the Olmec sites, which is the earliest ever image of a plumed or feathered serpent. The feathered serpent is a famous icon in Central America. Quetzalcoatl, who's the god of peace, the bringer of civilization, who is associated, for example, with the famous pyramid of Kukulkan, which is just another name for Quetzalcoatl at Chichen Itza, where on the spring equinox a shadow effect creates the image of a serpent coiling down the stairway and joining with the carved head of the serpent. There's the image from La Venta. That's the earliest image of a plumed serpent in the Americas. And sitting in the middle of it, and I made a big deal out of this because I think it is a big deal in Magicians of the Gods, sitting in the middle of it is this human figure who's holding this strange bag in his hand. And it's just a fact that those identical bags are found in ancient Sumer in the hands of individuals who were considered to be civilization bringers, and they also show up on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe. I call them man bags. And in that case, at Göbekli Tepe, we know they're at least 11,600 years old. So I wonder if we're looking at a sort of badge of office of a group of civilizers who traveled around the world trying to bring back to life a lost.
When I interrupted you to talk about Quetzalcoatl, what were you about to say?
I can't remember. I'm in California. I've been smoking lots of dope,
We were talking about different things in the Amazon. Should we rewind and figure out what we said?
Yeah, the serpent god you were talking about.
Before Quetzalcoatl, before that. I have another question. The Olmecs, you were talking about the genetics of these people that live in Native Americans, that they vary widely. But the Olmecs seem to have very similar features, the thick lips, the wide noses. Why do we think that is?
Well, this is part of a curious mystery that is not unconnected to the genetic mystery. It's been known by archaeologists for quite a long time that there are anomalous skulls in parts of Brazil, which appear to show very strongly Polynesian or African features, very much like the features that we see on the Olmec heads. And a number of archaeologists who got into trouble with their colleagues for this have used that to argue many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, that the settlement story of the Americas is much more complicated than we've realized. And what the DNA is doing is it's telling us that there was something really weird happened with settlement. You see, what happened with those African or Polynesian-looking skulls was that they were tested for DNA when DNA technology was not as advanced as it is today. And what that DNA showed was that they were more closely related to modern Native Americans than they are to any other people in the world. So the notion that there was some connection with Polynesia or Africa was dismissed. But now that we have very firm evidence of an Australasian genetic signal, Australian Aborigines, Papua New Guinea, Melanesians, with those kind of features, now that we have the genetic evidence that is found in the Amazon, we have to go back to that old evidence and reconsider it.
Wow. Yeah, I would love to find out what that is. They've always fascinated me. The Olmecs, it's always been such a strange image, the large heads with the helmets on them, and how do they universally look like that? I mean, all
of the features are very, very similar.
Wow.
They're very, very, very similar.
And always with the helmets.
And almost always. I won't claim that every single Olmec head has a helmet of it, because I think I've seen one that didn't. It's quite a while ago since I explored the Olmec area. But what's fascinating about them is they are supposedly the first high civilization of Central America, that they create structures on a massive scale, that you can see connections between them and the later Maya. That whole mystery of the Mayan calendar was clearly inherited from the Olmecs. It wasn't something the Maya made up. The Olmecs used that same symbolism. So the Mayan calendar is actually an Olmec calendar. And if we then consider the possibility that the Olmecs may just be the latest, the earliest surviving manifestation of that calendar, it could go back much further than that.
When the clip ends, What lingers is not an answer, but a question that refuses to sit quietly. If the Olmec civilization truly were the first great civilization of Mesoamerica, then history should feel settled, linear, predictable, safe. But it doesn't. And that discomfort is exactly where the truth may begin. Those colossal stone heads, each weighing tens of tons, each carved with precision, personality, and authority, are not just artifacts. They are statements. They tell us that, thousands of years ago, a society existed with the organizational power to quarry, transport, and sculpt megalithic stone without metal tools, without wheels, without beasts of burden. That alone should stop us in our tracks. And yet, mainstream narratives often treat the Olmec as a starting point rather than a mystery, as if complexity simply appeared out of nowhere. But civilizations do not emerge fully formed. They inherit. This is where voices like Graham Hancock disturb the calm waters of conventional archaeology. Hancock doesn't argue that we should throw out science. He argues that we should expand our curiosity, that perhaps, long before the Olmec, long before the Maya or the Aztec, there existed a lost chapter of human history, one erased not by myth, but by catastrophe. The end of the last ice age, roughly 12,000 years ago, was not gentle. Massive floods, rising seas, sudden climate shifts, entire coastlines vanished. If an advanced culture had existed near the oceans, and statistically that's where humans thrive, it would now lie beneath hundreds of feet of water. And here's the unsettling part. We've barely looked. Less than 10% of the ocean floor has been properly mapped. Entire continents could be hidden below the waves, while we argue over fragments on land. But the mystery deepens. Across the ancient world, from Göbekli Tepe in Turkey to the Andes to Southeast Asia, similar symbols appear. Serpents associated with knowledge, gods who arrive after a great flood, beings described not as kings, but as teachers, civilizers, survivors. In Mesoamerica, this archetype evolves into the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, an entity associated not with conquest, but with astronomy, agriculture, and moral law. A god who leaves, promising to return. Why does this story repeat? Skeptics argue coincidence, cultural diffusion at best, imagination at worst. But repetition across continents and millennia is not easily dismissed, especially when the symbolism aligns with real, measurable knowledge. Star cycles, solstices, advanced geometry, and mathematical constants embedded in architecture. And this is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable. Because if ancient people were not primitive, if they were inheritors rather than inventors, then the modern story of inevitable progress collapses. We stop being the pinnacle. We become the latest cycle. And cycles imply collapse. Look around today. We pride ourselves on technology, yet we are fragile. A solar flare could erase global communications. A climate shift could destabilize food systems. A few weeks without electricity, and modern civilization begins to fray at the edges. We assume permanence because we've never experienced total loss. But maybe others have. What if the Olmec were not the beginning, but the aftermath? What if their art is not crude experimentation, but memory, encoded in stone because stone lasts when everything else burns or floods? Education, in this context, is not about believing one theory over another. It's about intellectual humility, about admitting that the timeline we were taught may be incomplete, not wrong, but unfinished. Archaeology is not static. It evolves with every discovery. Göbekli Tepe itself rewrote textbooks. It proved that complex ritual architecture existed before agriculture, not after. That alone shattered decades of certainty. So the real lesson here is not about lost civilizations. It's about how easily certainty becomes blindness. We live in an age of data, yet we often mistake information for understanding. Ancient cultures looked to the sky not for escape, but for orientation. They aligned their cities with stars because they believed human life was part of a larger order. Today, We look down, at screens, at metrics, at quarterly growth, while losing sight of long-term survival. Maybe that's the warning embedded in these ancient stones. Not that advanced civilizations existed and vanished, but that they forgot they could vanish. If the Olmec are whispering to us across time, they are not saying we were gods. They are saying we were human, just like you, and humans forget. So when this clip ends, don't ask whether Graham Hancock is right or wrong. Ask a harder question. What knowledge would you carve into stone if you knew everything else might disappear? Because someday, someone may stand among the ruins of our world, staring at the remnants of satellites, cities, and symbols, and wonder the same thing about us. And history once again will decide what we failed to. Coming from episode 2160 of the Joe Rogan podcast, an ancient theory suggests that humans weren't a product of nature, but a genetic experiment created by extraterrestrial gods who arrived on Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago, and the traces of them may still be hidden throughout human history. Let's watch.
Some of the most interesting things about ancient history, particularly what came out of ancient Sumer.
Yeah.
Ancient Sumer, when you look at their tablets and like what are they saying and why would they dedicate so much time to talking about this stuff?
Exactly.
Why do they have pictures of giant enormous people looking things with like a humanoid with a tail sitting on their lap? Like, what is this just fiction?
Yeah.
Like, why would they detail this? And how do they have a representation of the solar system with the correct amount of planets and relatively the correct order and size? You know, it's not exact, but it's an artistic version of the real thing.
Yeah.
And how the hell 6,000, 5,000 years ago do they know that?
Yeah.
And what explanations do we have? Like, what's the conventional explanations when people tried to dismiss what they knew in ancient Sumer?
Well, the conventional explanation is always going to the term mythology. They
Right.
throw mythology around, left and right to cover up the fact that they have no clue or idea. So they turn it into mythology so they can kind of say it's all fantasy and fairy tales and this is how they express themselves or how they understood the universe. It's all mythology. It's all fake. But in reality, it's not all fake. These people left behind such detailed records and information. It's a time capsule of information on stone tablets for us today to be able to decipher, break down, and understand, and that's what we're here to do now.
When you look at these ancient languages like cuneiform, can you read that? Do you know how to read it?
Yeah, a small amount of it, yeah. Studying
How
it
does it
from
work?
books that I have bought right off of Amazon.
Oh.
Yeah, so basically you take a stick. It looks like a stick with a kind of a curved end, right? Almost sharpened. It's called a stylus. And then
just like a stylus for an iPad.
Exactly, very similar, right? And then you take a piece of wet clay, and right before it's too wet or too dry, right in the middle stage, you then start wedging, making these incredible lines into the clay, and then from that you get this cuneiform text. So this text literally, some of the letters actually relate to complete ideas. But it's incredible work, and it takes a long time to do. And then you have to let this thing dry, and then it becomes stone. So, if people were supposed to be trying to worry about how they're going to get their next meal, shelter for the night, and all these kind of things, who has time to sit down and write these incredible works of art like the Epic of Gilgamesh, for example?
Yeah.
So I think they really were writing down, and also they were transcribing information that was given to them by these quote-unquote gods with a lowercase g.
So when you're reading things like the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, for people who don't know, is one of the oldest versions of a lot of the stories that you hear in the Bible. Very similar to them. There always seems to be a great flood. There's a few heroes. There's angry gods. There's a bunch of stuff going on. And Zecharia Sitchin's work was like the most controversial on the Sumerian text, right?
Yes.
Because there's a whole website called sitchiniswrong.com. Like people go crazy about him.
Yeah.
But when he starts talking about it, when you read some of the things that they wrote, and when you see like some of the images that they created, the images that look like the double helix from DNA, and there's a bunch of the like that now we represent the caduceus, which represents pharmacies and drugs. Like that's the old version of an image of the double helix of DNA, or at least it looks super similar to that.
Oh, it definitely is, because it's referenced even in the Egyptian Book of the Dead and other ancient texts. So there's no coincidences here. Now, Zecharia Sitchin, I don't particularly go by his work. Not because it's controversial. I believe he was one of the greatest researchers of all time. And the reason why is because he laid out so much information for us to begin to scratch our head and ask questions. But what I figured out was that by going through the UCLA CDLI online cuneiform digital library, say that fast 10 times, I was able to take stone tablets and decipher them myself. So anyone can go online to the UCLA CDLI online cuneiform digital library and read these stone tablets for themselves. You don't need Zecharia Sitchin. You don't need anyone else. And as I began to break these tablets down,
do they have them transcribed, or are you reading the actual tablet?
They transcribe them. They actually transcribe them into English for you.
Is there controversy as far as, like, are there different versions of the transcription? Like, do some people think it's interpreted differently? Is like some debate about that?
Only where it comes to where some of the text is missing. There could be pieces chipped off of tablets. You see that corner missing from that tablet right there in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Just look how wild is that?
Yeah,
just how wild is that exists?
Yeah.
And that this was. It's so hard for people to put in their brain 5,000 years of time, and that there's these people that have this very bizarre language. Like when you look at that language, we don't even know what it sounds like, right?
Right. No, and the language popped up out of nowhere. You're talking about a civilization that appeared out of nothing.
It looks like computer code.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Just imagine like a human being deciding that they were going to write down in these very bizarre, and they all agreed that all these things mean a certain thing. So they had to somehow or another have a Rosetta Stone or something where they're documenting it so that people can learn it and teach it. And then we're looking at it 5,000 years later.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
It is. And what's incredible is this text was translated in the 1800s, long before Zecharia Sitchin was born. So there are some rumors that, he was the only one that could decipher these tablets. Well, no. George Smith, who worked as an Assyriologist and wrote many books and deciphered these Sumerian tablets in the 1800s. So we're talking about texts that have been deciphered for a few hundred years, nothing that was just deciphered recently.
So what are the first decipherings? Like what year was the first deciphering?
It was in 1800. I think around 1850. George Smith. He actually worked at the I believe it was Cambridge.
What was his take? Like, when he's reading all these wacky stories and all the Anunnaki stuff? Like, what's his take on it?
He is literally subscribing to this information the way almost that you and I see it today. These people saw something, experienced something, interacted with something, and he cataloged it, and it inspired him to write a complete translation of the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation. And he talks about the fact that information was copied right from those tablets and put into the Old Testament of the Bible. And so, not exactly like it's going to go from here to the Bible, but it went to other ancient papyruses and scriptures and so forth. And then later on, when it was discovered in caves, people took those and then said, okay, we got to put this into a book. And then it became the Bible much later, around 100 AD. But he subscribed to the theory that these people interacted with beings in some way, shape, or form, and that also this information is so incredible that it became part of the biblical text.
Did you ever read the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Yes, yeah.
So the Dead Sea Scrolls, what was it found in? What year was that? It was in Qumran, right? They found them in
Qumran, but I think again this was also, I believe, in the late 1800s or early 1900s.
Is when they found them. So these things are written on animal skins, and this is this is a very old version of those exact same stories, or some of similar stories.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weirdness in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I haven't read it, but is there any references to anything that's similar, like Anunnaki type characters, the Nephilim, or anything like that in the Dead Sea Scrolls?
They show up everywhere. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Enuma Elish, and the Epic of Atrahasis. Of course, even in the Bible, they're known as the Anak, A-N-A-K. We were grasshoppers in their eyesight, it says in the biblical text. So no matter where you go in any culture, you're going to discover that these beings, in some way, shape, or form, engaged mankind, brought knowledge, teaching, building techniques, and just so much more wisdom and information, esoteric wisdom, alchemy. All these things came from these people.
So the craziest version of this story is that they genetically engineered us out of lower primates and put us here to mine gold.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then established different types of civilizations and taught us how to build things, taught us all these different things. And enough time has passed that we've kind of forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Enough time has passed. That's the wackiest version of it, right?
Right. That's the bare bones minimum.
Yeah, the wackiest versions they made us, which is we've talked about this a couple of times, but how bizarre it is that human beings have this incredible fascination for gold. We're fascinated with gold.
Yeah.
This fascination with gold is really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why back when it was basically useless? You couldn't make a knife out of it. You
Right.
couldn't, like, it didn't make sense that this would be so valuable. Just because it's rare, you're barely alive.
Right.
We're going, right? We're going back to full-on hunter and
Yeah.
gatherer, our ancestors with spears and stone chipped, and then after that, gold emerges, and it stays.
Yeah.
It stays forever.
Yeah.
Now, when you read Zecharia Sitchin's book, he talks about this in the 1970s. His description of it was that they needed to suspend gold particles in the atmosphere because their atmosphere was being destroyed.
Right.
Then you move to like somewhere around the 2000s when climate scientists start proposing this idea of suspending reflective particles in the atmosphere.
Right.
And then when you realize the unique properties of gold, how unusual it is in terms of like a building material, you can coat things. The reason why things are like coated in gold, silver plated, gold plated rather, you can take a tiny piece of gold and cover an enormous area with it. It's
Yeah.
a strange metal.
Yeah.
Like really weird. And what, the supposed story is, it's very common on Earth, very rare on Nibiru.
Right. Yeah, that's the story. And now when I started looking into this gold thing myself, and here's what I came up with. So when you start analyzing the text, you discover that there was an encampment in a place called South Africa at Adam's Calendar. Okay. Now at Adam's Calendar, there's actually the very first gold mines discovered. They're dating them back to about 200,000 years ago. And that's incredible because there's a building there that looks like a worn down structure. Now, in the tablets, it talks about the fact that the Ijiji, who were the working class Anunnaki beings who were cleaning out the Euphrates and Tigris River so they can create irrigation and create a bustling civilization. Also, they were doing the actual construction themselves. No people needed, just them working. They were like the construction workers, and Anu and Enki and Enlil, these leader gods, were like the foremen, the master architects and so forth, right? The boss. So these people were working, but they weren't supposed to be enslaved. They were volunteers. They got tired of doing the work, according to them, for about 250,000 years of labor on Earth, and also, according to them, on Mars. This is in the text. They call it Lamu. And so they decided to go to war against Enki, Enlil, and Anu because their demands had not been met. So they went to meet them in the Epic of Atrahasis. They go to Adam's Calendar. They go to that same structure that was discovered where that gold mine is located. I was like, holy crap, there is some link here to gold. Specifically, exactly, I don't know. But I know if you're an advanced civilization, you need gold. And the people that you have working it for you probably think, it's to adorn or to adorn yourself or in recognition of the gods. So they'll wear it and they'll utilize it, but not for technology. What's crazy is they go to war, they get ready to go to battle, and then Enki says, I have an idea that will stop this war. There's an existing being on this planet. Existing, not something that doesn't exist, existing. We can add our essence to it with a slain god. So they're talking about taking the DNA or genetics from one of themselves and mixing it with the DNA of the hominid that was here. It's not specified whether it was, an ape man or anything, but they don't specify in the tablets. But to create a worker being. And they began to do this genetic modification, probably disconnecting some of our DNA, making genetic modifications to us to get us to take orders from them. They inserted something called a worship gene, which was just discovered recently, that human beings have a gene inside of them that can be turned on and turned off. It can be turned off in a laboratory setting. It can also be turned off with a magnetic field around your head. And when it's off, you don't want to worship anything outside of yourself. You look inside. And when it's on, you look to get something from the outside. So this is incredible. And
So
they made us
engineered
worship
a
people.
gene
Yes.
inside of us
Yeah.
to make us worship them. How
Right.
genius.
It's incredible because then you're not a slave anymore. You're doing this for the honor of the gods.
And for people who think all this talk is really crazy, I want to put into perspective that we talked about this the other day, that during which war was it where the Soviet Union was experimenting? It was scientists in the Soviet Union, correct? They're experimenting with creating a chimpanzee human being hybrid that they would probably send to war.
Yeah.
So instead of having regular people, we would make this monster,
Yeah.
this freak, ape man, and send him to war and have him
Program.
crush the enemies.
Yeah.
It's like it's just how crazy is that? They knew how strong chimps are. I got an idea. Let's
Yeah.
turn a chimp human, and that way, if he dies, who gives a fuck?
Right.
We made him. Get him to go to work for us.
Yeah.
And now, if you're a supremely enlightened being, wouldn't you think of human beings with all of our folly and all of our chaos and all of our war and bullshit and the internet and disinformation and misinformation? Wouldn't you think of us kind of the same way we would think about that chimp hybrid thing?
Yeah.
When you first hear the story of the Anunnaki, it sounds like something pulled straight from science fiction. Gods descending from the sky, shaping humanity, and vanishing back into the stars. But what makes this idea so unsettling is not just the possibility that it could be true. It's the realization that ancient civilizations, separated by oceans and thousands of years, all seem to share a similar memory. Beings from above, watching, teaching, and sometimes punishing. The Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations, didn't describe the Anunnaki as vague spirits or invisible forces. They described them as physical, powerful beings who came from the heavens and interacted directly with humans. These weren't distant deities in the clouds. They walked the earth, built cities, issued laws, and demanded obedience. And in their texts, humans were not the center of creation. Humans were a tool, a workforce created to serve the needs of the gods. Now pause for a moment and think about that idea. Not the literal interpretation, but the symbolism behind it. What if the ancient story wasn't about aliens with advanced technology, but about a deeper truth? What if it was a warning, a reflection of how easily human beings can become servants to systems, rulers, or technologies they don't fully understand? In ancient times, the gods demanded labor, worship, and obedience. Today, many people wake up, work long hours in systems they didn't create, follow rules they don't question, and spend their lives serving structures that feel bigger than themselves. The story of the Anunnaki may not be about aliens at all. It may be about power, who has it, how it's used, and how it shapes the lives of ordinary people. But there's another, darker possibility. What if these myths weren't just symbolic? What if they were distorted memories? Stories passed down through generations about encounters that ancient people couldn't fully understand. To someone living 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, a being with advanced technology might look exactly like a god. A spacecraft would be a chariot of fire. Genetic engineering would look like divine creation. A simple hologram or energy weapon would seem like magic. This raises a chilling question. If something like that really did happen in the distant past, where did those beings go? Did they leave forever? Or are they simply waiting, watching from a distance? Some ancient texts suggest the gods promised to return. Others say they left because humans became too chaotic, too violent, or too independent. And that idea of watchers, observers, or creators monitoring humanity appears again and again across cultures. In the Bible, in the book of Enoch, there are the Watchers. In Greek mythology, the gods constantly interfere in human affairs. In Hindu texts, there are celestial beings who descend to guide or destroy. Even in Mesoamerican cultures, there are stories of sky gods who taught humans knowledge before disappearing. Is it coincidence? Cultural imagination? Or a fragment of a shared memory humanity has never fully understood? What makes these stories so powerful is that they force us to confront uncomfortable questions about our origins. Modern science tells us that humans evolved through natural selection over millions of years. But there are still mysteries. Sudden leaps in intelligence, the rapid rise of complex civilizations, and the unexplained knowledge embedded in ancient structures and texts. While mainstream science has explanations for many of these, the gaps and mysteries leave room for speculation, and that's where stories like the Anunnaki thrive. But the real value of these stories isn't in proving whether aliens came to Earth. It's in what they teach us about ourselves. If humans were created to serve, then the question becomes, serve what? Serve whom? And do we still live in a world where unseen systems shape our behavior, our beliefs, and our futures? Look at modern technology. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and advanced robotics are moving at a pace that would seem godlike to ancient people. We are now on the verge of creating beings that may surpass us in intelligence. We are editing genes, building machines that learn, and designing systems that control entire economies. In a strange way, humanity is becoming the Anunnaki of the future, creators of new forms of intelligence. And that leads to a haunting thought. If we create intelligent beings to serve us, are we simply repeating the same story described in ancient myths? And if we are, what does that say about the nature of creation itself? Maybe the ancient texts weren't describing aliens from another planet. Maybe they were describing a cycle, a pattern that repeats across time. Advanced beings create lesser beings to serve them. Those beings evolve, gain intelligence, and eventually become creators themselves. And the cycle continues, over and over again, across the universe. If that's true, then humanity might not be at the top of the pyramid. We might be somewhere in the middle, created by something more advanced and destined to create something even more advanced in the future. That idea is both awe-inspiring and terrifying, because it means we are not the final step in evolution. We are just a bridge. And perhaps the real lesson hidden inside the Anunnaki story is not about aliens or ancient gods. It's about responsibility. If we are creators now, if we are building intelligence, shaping life, and altering the future, then we must choose what kind of creators we will be. Will we create beings only to serve us, as the myths say the gods did? Or will we create a future where intelligence, human or artificial, is treated with dignity, freedom, and purpose? The ancient tablets may never reveal their full truth. The Anunnaki may remain a mystery forever. But the questions they leave behind are more important than any answer. Because in the end, the story of the Anunnaki is not really about the gods who came from the sky. It's about the humans who are still here, trying to understand where they came from, where they're going, and whether they are truly in control of their own destiny.
Yeah.
Why? Because this is a machine that we have.
It's a biological machine.
Right. And once you understand it, you understand it.
Yeah. And you could fuck with that machine. You could juice it up. You could fucking get it stronger, get it smarter. You can do a lot of things with that machine.
This is what the Anunnaki said. Yeah. This is how you know that these are not made up things from people's imagination, because everything is too factual. Like this necklace, right?
Right.
People online were like, yeah, is that Buddhist or that's this or that? It's none of that. Like I just try to find the answers to things. So
is that a ship wheel?
I designed this because this is that thing that you see that all the Anunnaki guys that have that look like a wristwatch, and they always have it, and you're always trying to see what that is.
Yeah, what is that?
It is a time, and it's a compass. It's a timekeeping compass.
That's what that is?
Yeah. So that's what made the carrier of great importance, because he was able to do things that were magical in nature, like go somewhere and get right back. Like, you know what I mean?
So, yeah,
like
that thing on the wrist was a compass?
A timekeeping
compass.
Yeah. Right. So you had to believe in things that didn't exist at some point, like magnetics and distance and
Right.
probabilities and
Right.
right. That's how, like, if you were to read like thousands of books about people that knew a bunch of shit, like you start finding out that it's not really about knowing anything. It's about where to go to get the information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like when we look at all the ruins all around the world, like we're not seeing ruins of colleges and universities and all of that. We're seeing temples and synagogues and churches, but people don't understand that that's where that information was coming from for that period of time. When we went to these temples, they weren't in there singing and reading from a book. They were in there being taught things that they were able to go put into practice. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they were being taught art, agriculture. You know what I mean? Like they were being taught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they had some very bizarre knowledge too. They had a detailed knowledge of cosmology. They had a really detailed knowledge of our solar system.
100% of the writings across the world, whoever said anything about space or the universe or what was out there, why were all of them correct, Joe? It's not even possible. Like, how did they know that Mars was the red planet, and why was it a worldwide fact?
Right.
Planetarily, that Saturn had rings, like, based upon what information? Because nobody worldwide is disagreeing. Nobody's like, oh, I thought of this, or it came to me in a dream. Nobody's saying that anywhere in anybody's civilization. Everybody's civilization says this information came from the people that came from there.
Yeah.
There are no coincidences.
Well, they know that Mars used to have an atmosphere. Mars used to have an atmosphere. It used to have water. Something happened to its environment.
If that's correct, then there's a guy right now saying he's getting ready to put people up there.
Yep. Exactly.
You see?
Restart it all over again.
50 years ago, there was no water in our whole universe. Let them tell it. Now there's been water almost everywhere. There's water on the moon, for crying out loud.
When you listen to ideas about the Anunnaki and ancient systems of time, it's easy to get lost in the mystery of gods, lost knowledge, and civilizations that may have understood the universe in ways we still struggle to grasp. But what makes these stories truly unsettling is not the possibility of ancient aliens. It's the realization that people thousands of years ago were already thinking in cycles, not straight lines. To them, time wasn't just minutes and hours. It was rise and fall, creation and destruction, order and chaos repeating again and again. Empires would grow, become powerful, corrupt themselves, and collapse, only to be replaced by something new. And if you look at our world today, the pattern feels strangely familiar. We have more technology than any civilization before us, yet we face the same problems: greed, conflict, environmental collapse, and the fear that everything we've built could disappear faster than we expect. The ancient people may not have had satellites or computers, but they understood something deeper: that time is a cycle, and no civilization is immune to it. So maybe the real lesson isn't about gods from the sky. Maybe it's a warning. If we ignore the patterns of the past, we may be closer to the end of our cycle than we think.
But that's so Anunnaki is a term to say those who came from heaven to earth. That's it. In Africa, they call it the Nituru, which means the same exact thing. The gods that came from heaven to earth and turned mud into a kingdom. Now, the civilization they built is the Atlantean civilization.
So this is where we hear about Atlantis, the mythology of Atlantis.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
They built the Atlantean civilization.
And where's the evidence for this? Where do you read about that?
Well, if you look in the text, a lot of the Indian texts, the Vedas, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the ancient lore of the indigenous aboriginals, the Terra Papers, the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Atrahasis, the Code of Hammurabi, the Myth of Etana, There's so many tablets. I can just keep going down, down.
Everybody's referencing the Atlantean civilization.
Yeah.
Obviously, the most popular one was it Plato's uncle or something like that?
Plato. Plato wrote about that.
Oh, he did?
Yes, he did. Yes,
Okay. Got it.
And so, you start looking at this information. That was more recent. I mean, when I say recent, it's not as ancient. But the account of Plato's account of Atlantis is not that ancient. But we're talking about the ring city, but that was just one capital. So that ring city that was being described is one capital of dozens that existed on Earth at the same time.
Do we know where these other ones might be? Is there any remnants?
They were on every continent, every single continent. We're standing on Atlantis right now. We're sitting right on top of Atlantis.
It was New York.
Yes, everyone on this planet is on top of Atlantis. So when you start to look at the Americas, you discover that there were so many pyramids in the Americas. There were literally thousands of them. What happened to them? The Catholic Church blew up the tops of these pyramids and built churches on top of them.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Come on, bro.
Mark, bro.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I was raised Catholic. They never told us that.
No, they won't tell you that.
Give me a sip.
They didn't tell you a lot.
It's time to get going.
They didn't tell you guys a lot of stuff.
Hold on. So break this down.
Right.
There were pyramids everywhere.
Yeah.
How do the Catholics find out about it? Are they reading the ancient texts?
Oh no, they just know that we gotta eradicate this civilization science because we want to impose our will on the people. See, the Catholic Church went through something called the Inquisitions.
Yes.
It was the papal Inquisitions where they went around the planet and they killed and tortured and murdered 80 million people to convert them into Christianity. And
Got it.
So it wasn't spread like they tell you in church, the gospel means the good news. It was really bad news when these people showed up. It would be like America showing up to your country and you have oil buried in the ground.
Really?
It's bad.
Wow. So they were like giving women fucking rights and shit. Let them read. Ridiculous. Absurd.
They have.
What the fuck is wrong with these people, man?
If you go to the museum in Rome,
Yeah.
you'll find they still have the torture tools there in the museum. They're proud of them. They have the Pope's spear. The Pope's, spear, which went up in a woman's vagina.
I saw that one.
Pop them open from the inside.
Good.
They had a spire
Gracious.
that they would lower a man down onto the spire through his butthole over and over again, up and down until he died.
Damn, no Diddy, bro.
For real. They just had all these torture mechanisms.
Yeah.
What they would do is get the leader, the king, the chief, the guy who does all the sage and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The medicine man.
Yeah.
And then they would say, look, we need to convert everyone to this. And if you don't, then we're going to kill you.
You're going to fuck you from the inside out.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn.
So they would make everyone.
Who would do the fucking? Because I feel like that would be against Catholicism.
It would be one of these people from their church system and say, hey,
so there was a
job.
fucker. There was a guy who would.
There was a guy, he'd connect you and get you lined up perfectly.
Yeah.
And, and do that. Sick people, but when you
Do what you gotta do, all right?
It's wild.
You gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta spread the gospel.
You gotta spread the gospel.
Yeah, spread the gospel.
It is the good word.
Under the order of Rome.
Yeah.
And, but the big thing Rome said was, look, we got to get this money.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to convert our pagan system into a Christian system. We're going to combine the two together. That's why we have all these fake holidays that are all pagan holidays in Christianity.
That's my man Constantine, right?
Yeah, Constantine. They just combined it all together. Now we got the taxes and we got the offerings.
Yeah.
We got both. And now we got the people unified, and now we can put our boot on everybody's neck. And so once they reeled up the leader of that village or that town and killed him like that, and everyone saw it, it was like, okay, I'm ready to learn now.
Damn.
Teach me your language. Talk to me about your God. By the second, third generation, you're born, you're given a name, a race, and a religion, and you don't even know who you are.
Wow. So do you know which church in America or which churches are on old pyramids?
Oh, no. You just have to go out there. See, anything most of the older ones that are on hills with the triptych windows. The triptych windows are the same windows that mimic the three windows that you see in a lot of the pyramids, like in Chichen Itza, Yucatan Peninsula, and all of that. Those older ones, if you go to Mexico City, how I learned this, I went to Mexico City. I got a homegrown archaeologist. He started showing me all the hills and all the old churches. He said those were all pyramids.
So it's wild. Like when you go to the Mexico City pyramids specifically, they show you what it looked like before and what it looked like after, you can never look at a hill again.
Right.
And not think it's a pyramid after you go see it.
Facts.
It's so if go look at it, you can see not Chichen Itza.
Yeah, that's the triptych. Yes.
Ah, wow.
At the top of all Catholic churches, the older ones, they all have that triptych design. And most of the ones that are old in the 1800s built on those hills were
go to the
pyramids.
Mexico City pyramids and do it before excavation. Because what happens is grass just starts to grow on them.
Yes.
So they just start to look like terrain. And
hills.
yeah, they just
big
look like
ass
hills. And people have all these like explanations for it. Like my tour guide, look at that. So like if you just saw that, like that black and white picture to the right there,
Yeah.
Tell me that you would never look at that and assume pyramid.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Right.
Wow.
So now I have to look at every fucking hill and go,
Yeah.
should we dig this thing up and see? And some of them are just hills.
Yeah, some are just hills, but some are these.
Right? Got it.
So when the Anunnaki came to Earth, were there already Homo sapiens here?
Yes, good question. There were already not Homo sapiens, but hominids.
No, there weren't.
Our cousins.
Bad question.
Come on,
They were Homo erectus. They were our cousins.
Yeah, they were.
But I believe that they were more intelligent than us spiritually.
So
not
is
technologically.
it fair to say that the aliens were the first ones to smash monkeys?
No, they didn't do the monkeys. We were
They had to, right?
because when we were here, they didn't call us apes. They called us beings.
Yeah.
And in the Epic of Atrahasis, there was this big war getting ready to happen. And Enki and Lil and Anu were in this place in South Africa called Adam's Calendar, where they found the very first gold mines that human beings were working underneath their boot. Anyway, so the Ijiji, who were the working class Anunnaki, came from Mars to Earth to go to war against them because they felt like they were being enslaved, even though they weren't supposed to be enslaved. They were just working class people. They felt like they were doing too much labor. For 250,000 years, they were working.
Whoa.
And they came to Earth and they encircled the campus and they said, we're going to go to war. And it was like, well, why? And they were like, well, we've been asking you for relief. The workload is too heavy and we don't have any women. So
that's a big issue.
They were complaining about no women, literally in the ancient tablets. And so Enki says,
they need a king of diamonds, bro.
Yeah, what were they saying? What were they saying?
Enki says, I have an idea. Because they had kind of discussed in a weird way fashioning people. That means like robotics.
Okay.
But they had talked about their home planet. When they tried that, it failed. So that's a clue as to what AI and robotics can do to a planet. They were like, there's an existing being here, though, that we can add our essence to, talking about genetic modification, and get them to bear your load.
So don't make robots, make people that can do your work for you.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Yes.
Wow.
So they started with that method first.
So they're just forcing human beings to do their work for them.
Yes.
That's crazy.
And that's how they bring them the offerings.
Yeah.
When you bring the offerings, your best harvest and your fresh calves, that's their meat, that's their food.
This is what you see in the biblical text.
They're eating. That's their meals. They're not going to go out and hunt. I mean, this archaeologist was talking to me in Egypt in 2014 and was just laughing. He was showing me one of the altars. He said these people were so dumb. He just said his own people. He says they would line up in ancient times for miles to bring their best offerings to the head god. Wow. And the god was just putting them all this food in the storehouses. And he showed me where the storehouses were inside these temples. They would put these things in there. Then they had these other areas underneath the temple where other priests would go underneath and speak, and it would resonate their voice. And it would be the voice of God talking. And it was all this, nothing but a sham, to get them to bring all this food and gold and offerings and everything else.
I mean, I do believe that, because if you go to Chichen Itza, you can have the limestone creates this like a vibration effect, and you can have like a conversation, like me and you can talk to one another across a football field.
Yes,
like this.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the sound bounces.
It's crazy.
Comes right back at you.
Yeah. So if they were using that as some sort of a technological advantage, like some Wizard of Oz shit.
Yeah.
Whoa. So were they literally eating it, or were they eating off like the energy of the sacrifice? Or
no, they were eating the food. They were barbecuing.
What about sacrifice?
What about they had a cookout?
They weren't barbecuing. Just the aliens.
Eating oxtail and
Frank's
shit.
Red Hot. Someone sacrifice some more hot sauce.
I mean, think about it. I mean, if you were the ruler of a planet,
Billy, I think you might be putting on what you would do in that situation. Is that possible?
That's what the Middle East, best
I'm
food.
telling you, these people ate the food because I take tours to Egypt all the time. Last year I took 140 people on a private tour.
Yeah.
And when I go, I take a homegrown Egyptologist and a homegrown guide with us. And he takes us to the temples where they actually have the, where they actually have the storehouses.
He's getting hungry. Billy's getting hungry. It's like that damn barbecue.
Hey, man. Listen.
Okay, so go. So you're there. But they take you to all the different spots.
Yeah, so we take you to the temples and we show you where they would hide the food, where they take all the offerings and where they would store it.
Yeah.
It was their grocery store, literally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Is Jesus part alien?
I believe so.
And was he part alien and trying to do good?
Yes, I believe so.
So he was breaking away. He was using his power, and he's like, "Yo, what these aliens are doing to us is fucked up.
Right.
We need to break free from that, and I'm going to liberate the people."
Yeah. So you have to understand. You're right on point. There's good and evil in
Jesus
everything.
is the man, bro.
Yeah, he's there's good and evil in everything.
We're all part alien at this point, right?
Absolutely. It's in our DNA.
Ah, fuck. I thought he was a little bit more.
Well, he was more. He was a little bit more, yes.
How was he a little bit more?
Well, if you look at the Apocrypha text, you discover that not only was Jesus's mom a virgin birth, but his grandmother was also a virgin birth. Nobody ever talks about that in church, and they hear about that in Sunday school.
Wait a minute. So his grandma. So, wow.
Yeah. So you see this establishment of this particular bloodline.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he comes through the womb and then begins to regain all of his own memories, right? So he is a reincarnation of himself from a previous lifetime.
Oof.
That's why sometimes I hypothesize that he could be Thoth the Atlantean, who says that he could incarnate on and in any plane he desires. Could he have decided now to come back through the womb?
So Thoth the Atlantean was the king of the Atlantean Empire.
Yeah, he was one of them.
Or one of the leaders of the Atlantean
Yes.
Empire. He is reincarnating inside Jesus.
Yeah.
And why has he chosen to help the people instead of enslave us like he did in the
Good
past?
question. When you look at the ancient text where Jesus gets all of his information from,
Yeah.
the Emerald Tablets of Thoth.
We need to talk about that on the tablets, bro.
38,000-year-old text. In there, in the book that I wrote about it, I line up the Christian text and I line up Jesus's text from the New Testament.
This is going to seem really ignorant. People were writing shit down 36,000 years ago?
Thoth authored these tablets himself. He actually wrote, he didn't have a scribe. A lot of the times these God figures or these leaders would have scribes.
Right.
He actually wrote it down himself. He actually put it onto these tablets.
And what is he writing in? What language?
Well, it looked like the language was runes, R-U-N-E-S, okay? And in this text, he writes about coming to this planet after the Great Flood and seeing the temples of ancient Kemet sticking up out of the mud and actually going on a mission to help rebuild civilization. Not that it was for the first time, but he's rebuilding it to a high level.
So it was already built, destroyed. He's like, hey, let's run it back again.
Right. His father sends him on a mission. His father says, go to the land of Chem and do the plan that ye know of. So he gets his crew and he gets into the great ship of the master and he takes off until the planet disappears. This
Which
is an
is the
ancient text.
horizon.
Right, he's up in the sky.
Oh, he's coming from...
He's in a ship that goes up.
Gotcha.
Because you know this, because when he gets over the land of Chem, he goes, I see the land of Chem beneath us, and I see the temples rising up out of the mud that were flooded by the fountains.
Now we come back.
Now he comes down to the ground.
The fountains is the Great Flood.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
He opens the door, he comes out, and he calls these people barbarians coming to attack him, probably territorial.
Crazy.
And he says, I raised my staff and sent out a ray of vibration, stopping them still as fragments of stone of the mountain. So now he's got a stun gun that can freeze them in their tracks.
That's fire.
That's technology.
When people hear the name Anunnaki, they often imagine towering beings descending from the sky, shaping humanity like clay, and then disappearing into the stars. It sounds like science fiction, or perhaps an exaggeration of ancient myth. But what makes the idea of the Anunnaki so haunting is not the image of alien gods. It's the possibility that these stories are fragments of something real, echoes of encounters that human memory has struggled to preserve across thousands of years. The ancient Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations, did not speak of the Anunnaki as distant, invisible forces. They described them as powerful beings who lived among humans, ruled over them, and influenced the structure of society. According to some interpretations of the old tablets, humans were not created as kings of the earth, but as workers designed to relieve the gods of their labor. That single idea, if you sit with it long enough, becomes deeply unsettling. Because if the Anunnaki were real, and if they truly engineered humanity for a purpose, then the question becomes, are we still serving that purpose today, without even realizing it? Modern life may not involve building temples for sky gods, but the structure of society still resembles something ancient and familiar. Most people wake up every day, follow routines they didn't design, work in systems they don't control, and spend decades contributing to structures that outlive them. In ancient texts, humans labored for the gods. Today, many feel they labor for systems, corporations, governments, or technologies that seem just as distant and powerful. It raises a disturbing possibility. Perhaps the myth of the Anunnaki was never just about literal gods or aliens. Perhaps it was a reflection of a deeper truth about power and control, one that has repeated itself throughout human history. But there's another, darker interpretation. Some researchers and alternative historians believe the Sumerian texts describe advanced beings who came to Earth for resources. According to these theories, the Anunnaki needed a workforce to mine or cultivate the planet. So they altered the genetics of early humans, creating a hybrid species capable of intelligence, obedience, and survival. Now imagine how that story would sound if you were one of those early humans. Imagine realizing that your intelligence, your emotions, your consciousness, everything that makes you human, was designed not for your own evolution, but to serve someone else's purpose. That idea strikes at the very core of human identity. We like to believe we are the pinnacle of evolution, the masters of our own destiny. But what if we are not the end of the story? What if we are just a step in a much larger chain? Look at what humanity is doing right now. We are creating artificial intelligence, machines that can learn, think, and perhaps one day surpass us. We are editing genes, designing synthetic life, and building systems that operate far beyond any single human's understanding. In many ways, humanity is beginning to act exactly like the Anunnaki were described, creators of new forms of intelligence, shaping life for specific purposes. And that leads to a chilling question. If we are now creating intelligent beings to serve us, are we simply repeating the same pattern that created us? If the Anunnaki story holds even a grain of truth, literal or symbolic, it may be less about aliens and more about a cycle where advanced beings create lesser ones, who eventually become advanced enough to create beings of their own. A cosmic chain of creators and creations, stretching back into a past we cannot see, and forward into a future we cannot predict. If that's the case, then the real mystery is not whether the Anunnaki existed. The real mystery is where the cycle began. Who created the creators? And if the Anunnaki were once here, shaping humanity, where are they now? Did they leave? Did they destroy themselves? Or are they simply observing, waiting for humanity to reach a certain level of development before revealing themselves again? Ancient texts often mention the gods leaving, promising to return, or watching humanity from afar. To ancient people, these were divine promises or threats, but to modern minds, they sound eerily similar to the idea of a civilization monitoring its experiment from a distance. And if humanity itself is now creating artificial intelligence, genetic hybrids, and autonomous systems, perhaps we are unknowingly preparing ourselves to understand what the Anunnaki truly were. Not gods, not aliens, but creators, just like we are becoming. That realization carries a powerful lesson. If the Anunnaki created humans as servants, and we now stand on the edge of creating new forms of intelligence, then we are faced with a choice. We can repeat the mistakes of the past, creating beings only to exploit them. Or we can break the cycle, choosing cooperation, ethics, and responsibility over control. Because one day, the beings we create may look at us the same way humans once looked at the gods, with fear, confusion, and questions about their purpose. And if that day comes, what kind of creators will we have been? Maybe the story of the Anunnaki was never meant to be taken literally. Maybe it was a warning, preserved in myth and legend, about the dangers of power without responsibility, about what happens when creators forget the dignity of their creations. Or maybe it was a memory, faded, distorted, but rooted in something real. Either way, the message is the same. The greatest mystery is not whether the Anunnaki came from the stars. The greatest mystery is whether humanity, standing at the edge of its own godlike technologies, will choose to become wise creators, or just another chapter in the same ancient cycle. Coming from Joe Rogan's podcast number 1387, this conversation reveals chilling mysteries of the Aztec civilization, ancient knowledge, and rituals that make us question how advanced they truly were. Watch now.
Have you ever been to Teotihuacan?
No, I've never been there. I heard it's amazing, though.
Something really interesting happened to me there. Now, not only is this square that we went to and stand on this earth mound, and this guy whose nickname was Gorilla giving us this wonderful tour, just a spot, the most romantic tour ever of this place for such a rough place. And he goes, wait right here. And we're in this giant square, and he runs down this dirt mound about, I don't know, say 150 feet away, 200 feet away, and he goes, can you hear me? And it was like, oh my God, I could hear him. He goes, this square was built with these mounds here to be able to speak at this voice to 250,000 people.
Whoa.
And I was like, what? And then we walk. And
that right there? Is that it up there? Well,
yes.
on that screen too.
Well, it's that way and then go left.
You could look this way so you don't have to look backwards.
Yeah.
So over here. So
if we were to see that square, if we were to go straight around that pyramid and make a left, that's where those mounds are. And the other thing is, in these, that's the same shot from a different angle. That's near where these shaman lived. The shaman had quarters, like an area of this place. And there's these sort of things, and I said, what are these? And he said, they're reflection ponds. I said, oh, like for reflecting. And he goes, no, for reflecting. And I'd never considered that you don't look at the stars by going, but that really you look down and you mark. So in 7 years, when it comes around again, you're like, pattern. Because I'm always like, how do you look up and learn a pattern of that?
Right.
But by looking down.
So that's crazy. So they had ponds just to look at the reflection of the stars and map them out.
Yeah, the shaman did. That was like in their neighborhood. And the way you were a shaman is if you had a birthmark on your head when you were born, they immediately were like, 2 boards, rope, and just put 2 boards and roped you and began a lifetime of like, so you're a shaman. Which if you had a lifetime of that, you'd be like, hi, shaman. Hey, shaman. I mean,
so it's like being born a royal.
Squeeze the shaman. Don't squeeze the shaman.
Even more weird, right? Because you don't have a history or a bloodline of it. It's just
the study of what we are, and that is significant.
Mm-hmm.
Because it felt to me immediately like, well, everyone can't do that. We need, you don't have a thing on you, so you.
Yeah, if you don't have the birthmark.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good, entry, at the gate.
When you went to the Aztec temple as a musician, when you're sitting there, did it make sense? Like the acoustics, like the way it's set up, does the way the sound works, does it make sense to you? Like how they constructed it?
It left a very lasting feeling of that we're supposed to be here, and that it really restored a lot of faith in humanity. I didn't focus on the ritualistic murder that was going on there. It was just that's the one set of people. The other set of people built this, and they knew, and much like the Great Pyramids that are really, in the shape of Orion's belt, exactly that same concept of like, what's going on here matters, and if that is your focus. Think of how wonderful it could be, how did those people know how to make that with without the, they say without the wheel. That would be like really hard.
That seems insane. Yeah, the Aztecs didn't have the wheel, right? Allegedly. Yeah, how the fuck did they do all that? Well, at least the way they did it physically,
you can kind of like we know that they murdered 80,000 slaves in a period of just a few days after the construction of that temple.
Yeah, so it was like, don't tell me. Actually, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it.
I think they knew that they were going to be slaughtered. I think it was kind of like part of the gig.
Yeah, well,
maybe I'm wrong with that. I might be wrong about that.
Well, it doesn't. With that many people, it wouldn't sound surprising that you'd have some cooperation. I mean, it's hard to imagine 80,000 people at once going, "Sorry, what?" and not being like, "Well, fuck this, man."
Yeah.
That sounds like a cooperative event to me somehow.
Unless they were somehow or another locked up and they brought them out one by one.
That's an awfully big cage you've got there.
Yeah, it isn't. Yeah, 80,000. That's quite an arena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you'd have to build an extra one of those just to hold them.
Yeah, that's like a giant football arena filled with
it's
people.
That big.
Yeah.
It's that big. And what struck me as just because I play music is I thought, okay, that means these acoustics are so perfect. Like how do you discover that? Are you in a canyon and you're like, wow, this sounds, can you hear me over there? And then you sort of triangulate and start doing the geometry for how that works. And like, oh, quick, someone invent geometry first though, because I don't know. How does that, how manifest itself, that understanding?
Yeah, how many thousands of years did it take before they figured out how to construct something?
Yeah,
like
where
that?
someone on their deathbed is like, wait, one last thing about acoustics.
Sound kind of bounces off shit.
But it's got to be shaped like this.
Yeah.
With the Pythagorean theorem,
I've never been to any of the Aztec temples, but I went to Chichen Itza and saw some of the Mayan temples. And it just, whenever you're at a place like that, that's just magical, that's so fucking old and so amazingly constructed, you just think, what the fuck was it like to live back then?
Yeah.
Like, do we have a terrible idea of what they were like?
Of course.
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, but it sort of dawned on me at some point that it was like, oh, you mean the people that wrote our history wrote it as from the perspective of, by the way, we're way better. But okay, here's the story of these other people.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like by some kind of dickhead winner.
Right. A dickhead winner with guns.
Yeah. Before we get started, I'm better than the person I'm going to tell you about.
Yeah. But we can't, even though we can't do what they did.
Because what is the emotion when you're in that space? I'm trying to think of the right word to describe how I felt there.
Right.
And I guess
it's awe, right?
Yeah, it really is. It is awe, but
reverence.
Also there's almost reverence, and there's almost like some strange gratitude.
Yeah,
like where you're like, thank you I'm so thankful to be part of this, even just by living in a time to appreciate this.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It feels like knowledge expanding that I don't have, so I just feel like, oh, if I could have a piece of that, if I could understand a piece of that. But just standing there is sort of understanding it.
Right. We have such an egotistical perspective when it comes to our personal civilization that like this with the internet and with cars and with planes and all that, this is the best way to be.
There's a word for it. I can't. Can you try to find such a thing? There's please.
What is the word?
I don't. There's a word for the word. Definition is to believe that the era you're in is the finest of them all.
Yeah.
Up to this point. I think.
Yeah, I've heard that word. I know what you're saying.
It's some kind of dickhead syndrome.
Exactly.
It certainly was created by a man. There's some guy was like, do the fucking shit.
I don't think it was a girl. If it was, she was like one of them alt-right female chicks.
But don't you wish that there was like a supportive mother who was like, yeah, sure, honey, you're the best. This is the best.
You're number one.
Just don't worry about
the pyramids.
him. Yeah, don't worry about him, guys. He's fine. You're the best.
Yeah, it's like the same thing with the Native Americans and the settlers, that the settlers were imposing their lifestyle, but the people that experienced the Native American lifestyle, they wanted to stay living like that.
For sure. Well,
Yeah.
I think because it omitted so many of the things that the European culture was bringing.
Yes.
It seems like a distinct possibility that the European perspective, like when Pizarro and all that, was it 12 of them conquistadors killed like 1,000 natives in a matter of hours? When they land, they're looking for gold everywhere.
Right.
And at first, they have this belief that something big will come across the water and be their god. And here comes a ship with a bunch of dirty assholes that literally factually dirty assholes have ridden across a boat. And you know, I think about that perspective where they obviously were like, these people are nice, but I've had enough of this. They should have invented ships. We're better, so let's kill everyone here.
Yeah, well, Cortez
like, such
and
an ego.
Montezuma,
That's what I
right?
mean. Cortez.
Yeah.
Cortez. That's who it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was going on because I don't think previous to that time they'd ever seen anyone on a horse before.
No, and come across. You imagine a big boat and then a few horses where they're like, "What the fuck is?" Gary, come over and look at this. It's impossible to fathom.
A man riding a beast. They're probably like, "What in the fuck?"
With like rusty armor from being on a fucking boat for months.
Yeah.
Like looking like shit, being desperately like, like. I imagine their relief when they come off on these horses with this armor and all this stuff, and they're like, "They're cool. This is gonna be easy." You know. I mean, at first they must have thought maybe we could do this with some goodwill, but quickly it's like, you guys are too primitive. We're just gonna take over here.
I doubt they even thought they were going to do it with goodwill. I don't think there was any goodwill back then. I think people were just murdering people.
You think that there's that more people took more lives in a way, like for per capita or something?
I think that it was a more brutal way of taking lives. I'm sure people take more lives today in war, but I think back then it was it was hands on.
Right, but it seems like more percentage of the people that are alive had an opportunity or the possibility to kill someone than today.
Yeah.
Too. So it's like if you are with 150 people, all of which have killed at least 3 people.
Right.
That's an interesting group.
And then you land on a boat and
you've been there for months and you're like, maybe you are like, we got to kill somebody and rape something and take something as quick as possible.
And you have no idea what the fuck they're saying because you can't speak their language, so it's easy to just...
And they're being nice.
Yeah.
So you're like, they're going to fuck these people up in 5, 4, 3, like that silent count off. It's bizarre.
Well, that's the history of mankind is men showing up in boats and killing everybody that they met.
And then kind of doing their own version of a selfie on the dead body.
Yeah. Right.
Getting from this
paintings.
side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Draw me.
I would imagine what it would be like if you could be a fly on the wall when Montezuma met Cortez. Just to be there and see what that was like when these people who had never encountered Spaniards before and these guys show up in these boats.
With 2 absolutely different beliefs and perspectives of what's about to go down.
What's crazy is that is why Mexico speaks Spanish.
Yeah,
I mean, people don't get that in their head. Like, oh, Mexico.
It's why all of
speak
South America,
Spanish.
except for Brazil, Brazil is Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, we don't get that in our head. Like, Mexico speaks Spanish. Why do they?
And has horses.
Spain. Yeah, Spain's way the fuck over there. How is
where
what?
they speak Spanish?
Yeah, like it makes no fucking sense. But then you realize, like, oh my god, they were conquered by the Spaniards. Whoa.
Yeah, and a long time ago.
Fucking time ago. Long fucking
because
time ago.
I because of having my music teacher as a young boy drilled the song in 1492 from Spain through wind and storm and gale, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa.
1492,
which by my watch is a long time ago.
It is, but it's not. You know, like I had a joke in my act about the United States being founded in 1776. People live to be 100. That's 3 people ago. That's real, though. I know it sounds fucked up when you hear it.
Man, you're funny. Yeah.
When you hear it, it sounds like, is he right? Like, that's not right.
Well, what's
like,
funny is that's totally true.
Yeah, it is right. Yeah.
I mean, that's...
We just got here.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's right.
Yeah, the thing is, anything that happens before you were born seems like a million years ago.
Of course, but also 1776 seems like yesterday to me. I wasn't alive, and I'm ready to admit that, but that seems like, that is just very
fucking
close, I'm
super
sure.
recent.
Yeah.
And here is the part that history rarely warns us about. When you walk through those ruins, when you stand where the Aztecs once stood, you feel something that doesn't translate well into textbooks. It's not just admiration. It's not just fear. It's recognition. Because the Aztecs did not believe they were a failed civilization in progress. They believed they were the civilization. They believed the universe itself depended on them. Their calendar wasn't superstition, it was precision. Their astronomy wasn't guesswork, It was observation refined over generations. Their cities weren't chaotic. They were engineered with intention, symbolism, and control. Sound traveled across plazas without technology. Stone aligned with the heavens. Ritual aligned with time. From inside their world, it all made sense. And that's what should disturb us. Civilizations do not collapse because they are ignorant. They collapse because they are confident. The Aztecs believed the gods required sacrifice to keep the sun moving. To them, this wasn't cruelty, it was responsibility. If the rituals stopped, the world would end. So they continued, convinced that survival demanded obedience to the system they had inherited. Now pause. Because every civilization has its rituals. Today we don't cut open chests on pyramids, but we do sacrifice. We sacrifice forests for efficiency, attention for profit, long-term stability for short-term comfort. We tell ourselves these sacrifices are necessary, that without them, everything falls apart. Different altar, same logic. The truly terrifying idea is not that the Aztecs were wrong, it's that they were certain. Certainty is the most dangerous substance a civilization can consume. They could not imagine a world without their gods, just as many today cannot imagine a world without endless growth, constant connectivity, or technological acceleration. To question the system feels like questioning reality itself, and that's how blind spots form. History doesn't repeat because humans are foolish. It repeats because humans are consistent. Every civilization believes it has surpassed the past, that it has learned the lessons, that collapse is something primitive societies experienced, not advanced ones. But advancement is not immunity. Complexity often increases fragility. The Aztecs built something extraordinary, and complex systems fail in complex ways. They didn't collapse in a single moment. They weakened. They adapted in the wrong directions. They doubled down on beliefs that once worked but no longer fit a changing world. External pressures exposed internal cracks. Collapse didn't feel like collapse at first. It felt like normal life until it wasn't. That's another lesson ruins teach us. You never feel history happening while you're inside it. Right now, we live surrounded by systems we barely understand. Global supply chains, digital networks, algorithms shaping behavior, energy flows sustaining billions. These systems feel permanent because they've always been there for us. But permanence is an illusion created by short lifespans. The Aztecs also believed their world had always been this way. And yet, here we are walking through what remains. Stone lasts longer than certainty. What makes this unsettling is not the violence of the past, but the familiarity of the mindset. The belief that this must continue, no matter the cost. That the system knows better than doubt. That survival requires compliance. Civilizations don't fall because they lack intelligence. They fall because intelligence becomes trapped inside rigid beliefs. Wisdom is flexible, power is not. And here's the part most people miss. The Aztecs were not uniquely brutal. Human sacrifice shocks us now, but history is filled with normalized violence disguised as necessity. We simply call ours by different names: economic sacrifice, environmental sacrifice, psychological sacrifice. We hide them behind abstractions. That's progress until it isn't. The ruins are not asking us to judge the Aztecs. They're asking us to question ourselves. Would we recognize collapse while it's happening? Or would we explain it away with data, charts, and reassurances? Would we adjust, or would we protect the system at all costs? Because systems don't care about truth. They care about survival. And sometimes, survival of the system comes at the expense of the people it was meant to serve. The Aztecs believed they were keeping the universe alive. We believe we are optimizing the future. Both beliefs can coexist with destruction. This is why ancient civilizations feel eerie, not because they were strange, but because they were familiar. They laughed, loved, built families, argued, created art, and believed tomorrow would arrive as expected, until it didn't. The lesson isn't despair. It's humility. Ruins don't tell us to abandon progress. They tell us to slow down and look, to remember that no system is permanent, no belief is beyond question, no civilization is guaranteed continuation simply because it feels advanced. History is not a straight line upward. It's a cycle of creation, confidence, rigidity, and collapse. What makes our moment unique is scale. The Aztecs influenced a region. Modern civilization influences a planet. There is no untouched outside waiting if things fail, which means the stakes are higher than ever. So when you watch that clip, when you hear awe in their voices, understand that awe is the beginning of wisdom. Fear without reflection paralyzes. Awe invites curiosity. The Aztecs are not a warning from the past shouting, "Don't do this." They are a whisper asking, "Are you paying attention?" Because one day, long after we're gone, someone may stand among the remains of our world, physical or digital, and wonder how a civilization so intelligent could be so certain. And they'll ask the same question we ask now. How did they not see it coming? The answer is simple. They were living inside it, and so are we.
You mentioned the Aztec. What was the origin of the Aztec? Where did these people come from? At what time? And how?
You know, almost every one of the cultures we're talking about now, we have two different versions of the answer to that question. We have the archaeology version, and we have the Aztecs themselves. The Aztecs have this wonderful migration story where they say that they came from a place well to the north called Aslan, and that they had this migration that went through kind of a hero's journey where they go to this Snake Mountain place and they encounter the birth of the war god that they'll worship after this, and how they stepped into the Valley of Mexico as the lost brothers of everyone in the Valley of Mexico. They said that they all came from the north. Near Aslan is a place, a cave with 7 different passages called Chiquimostak, and that all the people who spoke the language Nahuatl came from the cave, and most of them went early to the Valley of Mexico. And in the Aztecs story, they were just the lost tribe. They were the last brothers to come in, but then they show up late game and they become mercenaries. They just start working for communities in the Valley of Mexico. And this takes place in the 1300s. So about 200 years before Cortez shows up, the Aztecs show up to the Valley of Mexico. And they make themselves this indispensable group of mercenaries. They do the dirty work. All the civilized communities around Lake Texcoco, which is in the middle of which is now Mexico City. It's all dried up. But those guys were too civilized to fight with each other. But they could hire the Aztecs to do their dirty stuff. So the Aztecs did that and really changed the politics and the game of the Valley of Mexico.
The dirty stuff, they're the muscle.
Yeah. They'd go in and they'd kill whoever you wanted killed and now you're the king of this area. So one of these kings that they were working for really liked them and decided, I'm going to make the Aztecs part of our ancestry. I'm going to give them my daughter to marry the head of the Aztecs. And the Aztecs sacrificed her. And that really pissed that guy off. So he took his whole army and ran the Aztecs out. For a while, they say they live in this horrible desert section eating lizards. But then one of their priests say, we're going to walk around the lake, and my visions say that where we see an eagle sitting on a cactus with a snake in its mouth is where we will build our capital. And they see that, but it's out on an island in the lake. And he said, well, I don't know. That's the place. So they build up an island. They go to that island, and then they just start piling up lake mud until they make a whole city there in the middle of the island. They make an island city. Mm-hmm. And all of this occurs in about 100 years. So they show up about 1300. The capital of Tenochtitlan, as they called it, is really established. And from there, they quickly take over the entire valley. They make what they call the Triple Alliance, which is the two other big communities of the lake are now their allies, but they're not really allies. The Aztecs were brutal. They were just, those guys agreed to shut up and let the Aztecs run the show. And then the Aztecs spread like a wildfire all the way down into the Maya area. Everywhere they go, they rename everybody's towns and make them pay tribute.
Pretty short lasting civilization. Spread extremely quickly. Famous. What are some defining qualities that explain that?
I think they were very much like, they had an attitude like Attila the Hun. They just had no problem ripping your skin off. Everybody else had become too comfortable and too civilized, and the Aztecs were just mercenary. They told everybody, you know, we can either rip your heart out or you can work for us. And if you work for us, you'll be just fine. They'd go to every town they'd go to. The first thing they do is they'd show up with a bunch of merchants. There was a merchant class who were also military. They were really the people who assessed where they were going to attack next. They'd go in with a bunch of Aztec products and say, we'd like to trade with you. But all the time they were assessing their military prowess, what products they had that they could take. And then soon after the Pochteca were there would come the military with the reconnaissance.
So the Aztec had a huge warrior class, as you're saying. So what was their just, can you linger on their whole relationship with war and violence?
They worshipped a war deity. Their main temple was the Templo Mayor. It had two temples up on top. One was to Tlaloc, the rain god, who liked a lot of sacrifice himself. But then the other one was Huitzilopochtli. He was, that translates the hummingbird on the left. But he's the war god. I love that he's a hummingbird. Maybe, you know, he's fast and he comes from the magical side or something. But then right next to the temple on either side were the two temples of the warriors. One was the Eagle Warrior clan. The other one was the Jaguar Warrior clan. And they were symbolically in competition with each other, though a unified force. I guess, you know, probably an analogy between like the Navy and the Air Force. You know, they had a good-natured competition of who was better, but they were the same force. So those were their symbolic warriors, dressed up in all of their finery, and they would come at people with these two forces, and it was very unlike anything that had happened before in Mesoamerica. Again, I think I could draw a parallel to what happened in Europe. You know, the famous Henry V moment in Agincourt, where, you know, his kind of ragtag army wipes out half of France's aristocracy with the longbow. Like, up until that moment, Europe had a very wars for the elite classes kind of attitude. And then after France lost half their aristocracy, then it was like, maybe we should be hiring from the villages. The same sort of thing happened with the Aztec, that there was Mesoamerica really didn't have huge standing armies. But the Aztec put this army together and they intimidated people. They didn't actually have to use it a lot. It was used to great effect in the Valley of Mexico. And for the rest of Mesoamerica, it was mostly the fear factor.
But there also seemed to be, you know, a celebration of violence. I think you said that beauty and blood went hand in hand for the Aztec. Maybe like the Roman Empire. Was it they just had maybe a different relationship with what violence, where that stood in the purpose of life, purpose of existence? Is that fair to say?
I would hypothesize so. I mean, you know, I think it's one of the wonderful things about studying these ancient cultures, you know, knowing what our human capacity is. And the Aztecs, when I said that statement, what I meant by that is they were absolutely comfortable with human sacrifice and, you know, ripping people's hearts out.
Yeah.
They had this just, you know, grotesque, violent bent, but in the same way, they also absolutely loved flower gardens and poetry and music and dance. The same Aztec king who would order the hearts of 1,000 people extracted also would stand up at dinner parties to recite his own poetry or the poetry of famous statesmen that had come before him. And they spent money on things like flower gardens. All of the causeways leading to the Aztec capital had beautiful flower gardens, and they had a museum, and they had an aquarium and a zoo, and they had an opera, and they had a ballet.
Yeah.
And these things existed together. There was not in the Aztec mind any conflict between witnessing someone's heart getting ripped out one moment, in the evening we'd go to the ballet.
How does that contrast the relationship with war and violence with the other civilizations of Mesoamerica and South America? Maybe the Maya. What was their relationship like with war?
The Maya were certainly influenced by the Aztec at the end, so we get a skewed perspective from the contact period accounts, because the Maya were much more violent and sacrifice-oriented in their post-classic rendition, but in the classic period, it was mostly the priests and the king who were doing the sacrificing of themselves. We know that the Maya kings would cut their penises and then bleed that blood onto paper, and the paper would burn and become the smoke through which they'd commune with their ancestors. But they'd actually tie this paper onto their penis, cut it, and then dance so the blood splattered. But it was them cutting themselves. It was different than killing a bunch of other people for it. It was a auto-sacrifice, we call it. Still very macabre, but very different than deciding a whole bunch of other people should die. It was a self-sacrifice thing.
Can you speak to sacrifice a bit more? Animal sacrifice, human sacrifice. What role did that play in for the Maya, for the Aztec, for the different cultures here? Was that religious in nature?
It was absolutely religious in nature, and the Aztecs were of the opinion that that the war god demanded people were captured and sacrificed, and it had to be valuable people. There was a lot of before they made that big standing army, they had just ritual battles that they would have, and they'd take captives. In fact, all around Mesoamerica, they wanted captives so that they could bring them back and sacrifice them for the gods. And the Aztecs, deciding to specifically follow the war god, did this more than anybody. They did it so much and so successfully that they didn't have any enemies nearby. So they decided this one poor sucker group, not that far away, called the Tlaxcalans, that they were never going to make peace with them, so that they could go close by every year and just have a little symbolic war with the Tlaxcalans and haul them back for a sacrifice. Cortez met those guys, and he was like, here are people who hate their guts. I'll just use these guys. So, we say, oh, Cortez took over the Aztec world. It was Cortez and 20,000 super pissed off Tlaxcalans.
And they actually sacrifice what? So there would be kind of these ritual battles, or is it chopping off people's heads? And is there some interesting rituals around the sacrifice?
It's mostly heart extraction, sometimes heads, but they bring them up on top of the temple so everybody can see it. And they had a specific stone where they would bend them over so their rib cage would come out. And they'd use like a thick obsidian knife, and they had a really just like tried and true way to do it. They'd stab it in a certain place close, and then they'd push down on the sternum as they ripped up on the rib cage. And they just make a place where they could just rip it right out.
With their hand.
With their hand. But they were really just surgical about it. They'd use a thick obsidian knife where they could just break the ribs right along the sternum and then push the sternum down, pull up, and just...
While the person was alive?
Yep, while the person was alive. And the Aztecs had this idea, like there was a horrible drought that went on that almost ruined the entire valley, and they came to this conclusion that it's because we haven't been killing enough people.
Right.
We've got to bump this up. And then when they did, and they decided they really took it out on the Tlaxcalans, it rained again. So it was proof positive that they should just keep doing that. And they ate people as well. They really did.
As part of the sacrifice, or is this
after the sacrifice? Then they would eat them, and this was part of the drought and the famine thing that started. But then it was just kind of the thing to do. When Cortez got there, they were still having certain special feasts that involved humans, and it really upset the Spanish that they would be like tricked into eating human. Like, hey, you liking dinner? That was a human.
So the idea was it actually having a taste for human flesh, or is it just these kinds of ideas of like if you eat a person's heart that you can get their spirit and their strength? And
in the case of the Aztecs, it seemed like they just liked it. This guy Sahagun, who was a very responsible chronicler, that was pretty specific that like there was a distribution thing.
Yeah,
like the elites got butts. The butts were the best part. So the butt cheeks, really? Those are the best parts to eat. And then like it went down the chain until some people just got like fingers and toes.
Literally about taste for the Aztec.
Yeah.
Boy. All right.
They really did. They really did. In fact, that's what caused the have you heard of the Noche Triste, the sad night? The night that the Aztecs really go nuts on the Spanish and kick them out. It's all triggered by this one guy, Pedro de Alvarado, who's left in charge by Cortez, as Cortez goes to the coast and tries to talk to the new force, talk them into being for him, which he does. But Pedro Alvarado's left back in town in charge, and they're doing another one of these huge Aztec buffets and parties to honor them. And it happens. The guy says, hey, do you like dinner? Like, oh, yeah, it's a nice dinner. Well, it's humans. You're eating humans. See, I told you they were good. And Alvarado just freaks out, and he has the guards close the doors, and he murders everyone in the party. Women, children. Nobody has weapons. He just murders everyone. And that's what spazzes the Aztecs out to eventually murder Montezuma, who was their captive, and then try to murder all of them. And it was all Pedro Alvarado's fault for freaking out about eating humans.
Just a little practical joke.
Yeah, it was just, they thought it was funny. He did not.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize. So I kind of assumed that some level of cannibalism would have to do with, eating the heart to gain the spirit of the person or something like this. But
in certain like deer hunting rituals, things for sure. But the Aztecs, no, they just liked eating humans. It was part of the fear factor too. I mean, they could walk into a new town and be like, "You guys could either send us, a number of Quetzal feathers every month, or we could eat you."
So that's psychological warfare and actual warfare. It worked, and that's how they spread quickly.
Mm-hmm. And they were just about to take over the Maya when the Spanish came and messed everything up. They had the Maya surrounded, and they were about to take over the whole Yucatan.
So you think without the Spanish, there would be this Aztec empire that would last for a very long time?
Well, I think there would have been an Aztec empire. I think they would have finished dominating everybody, but they did it through hate, and everybody hated the Aztecs.
Did.
So it wouldn't have lasted forever. They were not ruling justly. They were ruling by force, and that can only go on so long before revolution happens.
And this is where the story becomes uncomfortable. Because once you truly understand how the Aztec Empire rose, you are forced to confront a deeper truth, one that has nothing to do with pyramids, blood rituals, or ancient gods. The unsettling truth is this: the Aztecs did not think they were building a fragile world. They believed they were building the only world that could exist. Their empire rose from scarcity, migration, and desperation. They arrived late to the Valley of Mexico, surrounded by more powerful neighbors forced to adapt or disappear. And they adapted brilliantly. They engineered floating farms from swamp water. They transformed myth into political identity. They fused religion, warfare, and governance into a single, self-reinforcing system. From the inside, it looked like destiny, and that's the pattern. Civilizations do not rise because they are lucky. They rise because they discover systems that work for a time. The Aztecs discovered how to scale power quickly. Military expansion brought tribute. Tribute sustained cities. Cities reinforced religious authority. Religion justified conquest. The system fed itself. But systems that feed themselves also begin to demand sacrifice. At first, sacrifice feels symbolic, then necessary, then inevitable. And that's where fear enters the story, not fear of the past, but fear of recognition. Because every advanced society creates stories to explain why its way of life must continue. The Aztecs believed the sun itself would fall from the sky if they stopped. That belief was not madness, it was coherence within their worldview. It unified society, justified authority, and gave meaning to suffering. Now look around. We no longer believe the sun needs blood, but we do believe something equally absolute, that growth must continue, that complexity must expand, that slowing down is failure. We believe collapse is unthinkable because it would disrupt the systems we depend on. Different mythology, same psychology. What makes the Aztec story eerie is not the violence, it's the certainty. They believe they had uncovered the rules of existence. And once a civilization believes it understands reality itself, doubt becomes dangerous. Doubt threatens the system, and systems don't tolerate threats. Ed Barnhart reminds us that the Aztecs were not uniquely brutal, they were uniquely organized. Violence was not chaos. It was structured, ritualized, and justified by cosmology. That's what made it sustainable. That's what made it invisible from the inside. Collapse doesn't feel like collapse while you're living in it. It feels like order being maintained at increasing cost. The Aztec Empire did not fall because people suddenly woke up one day and realized it was wrong. It fell because external pressure met internal rigidity, because alliances shifted, because enemies exploited resentment, because the system demanded more sacrifice than it could sustain. And then it unraveled shockingly fast. That speed is another warning. Complex systems often fail suddenly, not gradually. They appear stable right up until the moment they aren't. The Aztecs did not experience centuries of visible decay. They experienced a rapid inversion of power. One moment, they were the center of the world. The next, they were history. This is where the lesson becomes modern. Today's civilization is more complex than anything that has ever existed. Global trade, energy networks, digital infrastructure, financial abstractions, systems layered on top of systems. No single person understands how it all works. We trust that it works, because it always has. But trust is not understanding, and complexity is not resilience. The Aztecs mastered their environment, but they also locked themselves into it. Their political power depended on constant expansion. Their religious authority depended on continuous ritual. Their social order depended on obedience to cosmic necessity. Ask yourself an honest question. What would happen if our rituals stopped? What if growth slowed? What if energy became scarce? What if trust in systems eroded faster than they could adapt? Would we calmly restructure, or would we defend the system at all costs? History suggests the second. This is why ancient civilizations feel haunting. They are not warnings carved in stone, they are mirrors. They reflect patterns that repeat whenever intelligence outpaces wisdom. The Aztecs were astronomers, engineers, poets. They were not ignorant. They were brilliant within the boundaries of their worldview. But those boundaries hardened into walls. And walls don't bend, they crack. The truly frightening realization is that collapse does not require evil intent. It only requires systems that reward short-term stability over long-term flexibility. It requires belief structures that turn adaptation into betrayal. Every civilization thinks it will be the exception. Every civilization believes it has learned from the past. Every civilization underestimates how invisible its own blind spots are. The Aztecs left behind stone. We are leaving behind data, algorithms, digital traces, carbon layers in the earth, signals that future archaeologists, if any exist, may struggle to interpret. They may wonder how a civilization so connected could become so fragmented, how one so informed could become so certain, how one so powerful could become so vulnerable, and they may reach the same conclusion we reach today when we study the Aztecs. They believed their system was necessary. That belief is not a flaw. It is a human instinct. The lesson here is not fear, it is humility. Understanding the rise of the Aztec Empire teaches us that progress is not linear, power is not permanent, and intelligence is not salvation. It teaches us that civilizations are stories we tell ourselves, and stories can end. But endings are not inevitable. The difference between collapse and continuation is not technology. It is reflection, the willingness to question sacred assumptions, the courage to imagine alternatives before necessity forces them upon us. The Aztecs teach us what happens when meaning, power, and survival fuse into something unquestionable. And the most haunting part? They probably never imagined that their greatest achievement, the system that unified them, would be the very thing that made them fragile. That is not ancient history. That is now.